Chapter 51. Protector Bonus. Bonus for 100 PS. Hollow diamond, hollow diamond, hollow diamond. So, Hirazen's voice dropped suddenly, rich with enticement. He leaned in slightly, gaze pressing on Ryo like something with weight. Do you want to grow faster? To show your gifts on a broader stage? To shoulder a greater purpose? He cast out the bait. Come, join the Anbu. I will teach you personally. Even the Hokage's restricted jutsu archives will become a treasure vault for your power. He watched Ryo's face. Still no reaction. Ryo felt nothing inside. If anything, he wanted to laugh. Direct entry Anbu. Trail after you like a guard dog. On call at all hours with brainwashing on the side. A flicker of annoyance crossed Hirazen's heart. Temptation like this would make any young shinobi's eyes shine. Private tutoring from a Kage-level mentor. The Hokage himself tilting the village's resources your way. And he was not interested at all. Hirazen's smile tightened at the edges. Ryo curled his lip and cut him off. Hokage-sama, is there anything else? The subtext was clear. If not, stop talking. I do not have time to listen to you drone on. I am not keeping you company. Hirazen's throat bobbed. He swallowed his irritation. Hey, this old man is being long-winded. So you do know you are rambling, huh? Ryo groused inwardly. Farewell. Ryo turned on his heel, the wind at his back. Watching Ryo's departing figure, Hirazen did not get angry. Enough. You cannot rush a recruitment. The kid is ultimately Tsunade's student, call him a grand student of mine. A temperament like his needs more bonds to guide him. Time hurried by, and the day of graduation from the academy arrived. Next, Uzumaki Kushina. The proctor's voice rolled across the training field, carrying a touch of ritual fatigue. The sunlight was a little harsh, throwing mixed looks of nerves, anticipation, and schadenfreude across the faces of the watching examinees. Today would decide whether they could wear a forehead protector and become genin. In the center of the field, a giant bullseye had been painted on the ground, with a few crude wooden posts nearby for substitution practice. The air felt tacky, as if sweat and unease had congealed in it. Red hair blazing like fire, the girl swaggered into the center, chin tipped up, yet her eyes kept straying to the side, to the figure leaning in the shade beneath a tree at the edge of the grounds, arms folded, as if none of this had anything to do with him. Ryo, red hair, silver eyes, gaze deep enough to show nothing. Others were sweating through their palms and drumming heartbeats on the exam field. He looked like he was sunning himself in the backyard, maybe even bored. A simple black training outfit set off his straight posture. Yet he radiated a chill that warned strangers away. TCH, laying it on cool again, Kushina muttered inside, her cheeks heating for no reason. This guy, he is easy on the eyes. Why wear that deadfish face all day? Although, seeing that profile of him against the tree just now, maybe. Focus. Uzumaki Kushina. The proctor tapped his clipboard, impatient. These cohorts get more and more unruly every year. Ah, okay. Kushina snapped back to herself, cheeks flushing, and hurried into stance. She drew a deep breath. Her hands flashed, chakra surged. Ninja art, substitution. Bang. Smoke burst. A wooden post stood where she had been, and Kushina's real body landed neatly on the far side of the bullseye. Crisp execution, deft chakra control. Even the arc her red hair carved through the air had a fierce snap to it. Pass. The proctor ticked his notes. A sprinkling of applause sounded, along with a few audible inhales from some boys. Red hair might mean Uzumaki, but a pretty face is still a pretty face. Kushina's face bloomed into a broad grin, bright as a sunflower. She bounced toward the sidelines, straight for that strip of shade beneath the tree. Ryo, look, does this forehead protector look good on me? Her voice arrived before she did. Kushina all but collided into Ryo's field of view, standing pertly in front of him, head tilted just so. The brand new Konoha protector she had just tied to her brow caught the sun and flashed. Sunshine, clean sweat, and a girl's bright scent washed over him, fresh and dizzying. Average. Tighten the knot, it is crooked. At the edge of the open ground, under a spill of hair bright as the sun, Namikaze Minato held his freshly earned protector. The smile on his face cracked, then froze, like ice breaking over a winter lake. He watched Kushina lean so close she might as well fall into Ryo's arms. He watched the light in her eyes blaze for Ryo alone. He compared it to Ryo's cool reply. The metal plate in his palm should have been cold, yet it burned like a brand. Hey, Minato's mouth twitched at his own expense, the smile bitter. Forehead protector. Wear it or not, what does it matter? A sourness named jealousy and loss wrapped his heart like a snake. TCH. Kushina eyed Ryo's return to his ice block act. Then she spun on her heel and marched off. Makoto. Makoto. Quick, am I cool or what? Kushina looped her arm through that of the black-haired girl just walking down from the other side of the exam field. Uchiha Makoto, gentle bearing, sleek dark hair, a delicate face wearing a soft smile like moonlight on a spring. She had just finished her own test, elegant, precise movements, earning a nod from the proctor. Yet in this moment, her gaze had, without a trace, slipped back from Ryo's direction, carrying a dimness even she had not noticed, and longing. At Kushina's call, Makoto startled like a fawn, yanking her eyes away. Something flickered fast in their depths. She smoothed her skirt on instinct, a flawless gentle smile blooming at once as she cupped her tone in playful praise. Wow, my Kushina is obviously the cutest in the whole world. She cupped Kushina's cheeks, her eyes almost entirely pure. Look at that protector, paired with your red hair, it is dazzling. Like the brightest flame gem. Of course, Kushina's confidence, dented by Ryo, refilled to the brim in an instant. Kushina, do you think, after we graduate, we might end up on the same team? If I could do missions with my best friend, that would be wonderful. Hope glimmered in her eyes. Her voice was gentle. She truly wanted to be with Kushina. The words were like a pin, pricking the balloon of Kushina's joy. Her radiant smile hesitated visibly, then turned a little stiff. Team assignments. Fighting side by side with your bestie. For most shinobi, that was a natural hope. For her, it bordered on a fantasy. Kushina's gaze flickered. The corners of her mouth fought to keep their curve, and still a thread of bitterness crept in. Makoto, she trailed off, ducking the truth as a cold river sluiced through her chest. That she was a Nine-Tails Jinchuriki candidate was top secret. It doomed her path to one starkly different from the average genins. A cage, watchful eyes, perhaps a future of never leaving the village for dangerous missions, these shadows never quite went away. After the bustle fades, loneliness is the deepest undertone. I actually hope I am assigned with Ryo. Kushina blurted the truth in a half-sulky tone. If anyone could make the solitude a little warmer, a little more bearable, it was the guy who scowled beside her day in and day out. She thought of the favor she had wheedled from Tsunade months ago. Had that perpetually tipsy woman remembered? With me. Makoto's heart leapt, like fireworks going off in her chest. A joy she could not name washed away the shame and awkwardness of being seen through. On the same squad as Ryokan. The thought kicked her heartbeat up again. She pressed a palm to the near escaping thing in her chest and kept her face composed, adding a touch of playful sisterly loyalty. Well, if we are that lucky, I will make sure to keep a close eye on your treasure for you. I will not let anyone steal him, especially certain. She left it hanging, then leaned into whisper, switching with Kushina to the encrypted channel of girl talk, conspiratorial and sugared. Murmur, murmur, chirp, chirp. The two girls huddled together, temple to temple. One snuck shy peeks at Ryo. The other flushed, eyes shining, nodding and smiling and nodding again. The picture was youth itself. Ryo snarked at it in his head, but his mood, inexplicably, lifted. At least that silly girl Kushina had her smile back. Next, Kamiyama Ryo. To be continued. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 52. The Lonely Figure Bonus. Bonus for 200 PS. Next bonus at 300 PS. Thank you for your support smiley face. Ryo strolled out from the shade at an unhurried pace, casual as a walk in the park, utterly out of tune with the tight, exam day air. The grounds fell instantly silent. Dozens of gazes pinned to him. Some curious, some jealous, some looking for a spectacle, and others, like Makoto's, quietly intent. The proctor eyed the boy who radiated, couldn't care less, from head to toe and frowned deeper. He had no fondness for problem students. Talent or not, you needed a proper attitude, weight and measure. Tested ninjutsu. Kawarimi no jutsu, the proctor called, voice purposefully loud and cold. Ryo, this isn't a stage for showing off. I want standard form, perfect hand signs, perfect chakra control, a clear substitution effect, not a hair short. He was laying down rules, plain as day, itching to nitpick. Hey, a breath of a laugh, so soft and yet somehow exploding in everyone's ears, snorted from Ryo's nose. And on the tail of that single scoff, space itself seemed to ripple. An invisible, crushing pressure burst outward from Ryo's position, not a flare of chakra, but the stillness born of absolute speed and power. Ryo's figure, no one even saw him move. Where he had been standing, only a faint afterimage fluttered, thin enough to miss if you blinked. A fraction of a second later. Tick, a soft click in the air. Ryo's real body now stood, blank-faced, composed, specter silent, dead center on the painted bullseye. Fast. Breathtakingly fast. Fast enough to upend everything the onlookers thought they knew. No hand signs. No warning. No puff of smoke from a substituted log. Only an instant shift, as if he had stepped straight from one panel of a painting into another. The exam field went corpse still. The proctor's mouth was still open. The reprimand he had preloaded jammed in his throat like a broken gear. For a heartbeat he wondered if his old eyes were playing tricks. Had he fallen into a genjutsu? The point of Kawarimi no Jutsu is to take a different place, isn't it? Ryo's cool voice shattered the hush, like ice beads bouncing on stone, crisp and clean. He lifted his lids lazily and looked at the petrified proctor, the corner of his mouth bending by the tiniest, almost imaginary fraction, maybe just a trick of light. He paused, voice not loud but cutting clear through every ear, used substitution in a more direct way. He let his gaze rest on the proctor's face, fear and confusion written there, and added, light as asking what was for lunch, I directly replaced the log and stood here instead. Any problem with that? Thump. Someone, no one saw who, couldn't bear the invisible pressure and sagged to the ground. Then, after that dead silence, came a chorus of gasps and cries. Gee good God, how did he do that? Where were the hand signs? I didn't see any. Jealousy, scorn, the mood for watching a joke, crushed to powder in an instant. Only awe remained. And fear. Makoto clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. She stared at Ryo's casually upright back, the way he seemed to suppress the entire field just by standing there, and her heart slammed like it wanted out of her chest. The heat in her eyes nearly overflowed. Strong. Too strong. Strength beyond understanding. This was what she admired. The unmatched, the invincible. That absolute confidence and control beneath the cool exterior, she was lost. She realized she was shaking, head to toe. Kushina's face, meanwhile, was red with excitement. She shot to her feet, waving both arms, ignoring every glance around them. See that? That's mine. Is he awesome or is he awesome? So freaking cool. She looked a second from leaping up and clinging to him. At last the dismissal bell rang, heavenly sound, freeing the crowd from the vast shadow Ryo had cast. Kushina practically sprinted to Ryo's side, wrapped herself around his arm, tipped her face up, her eyes still sparkling with leftover thrill, and, just a little possessively, called over to Makoto not far away. Right, Makoto, we graduated today, how about we eat together after school to celebrate? Super important occasion. She made a point of it, then added with shameless pride, and listen, Ryo's cooking is amazing. Best in the world. Once you taste it, you'll never forget it. 100 times better than any barbecue. Thinking of the parting to come, a true shadow of loss and longing crossed her eyes. After we graduate, everyone's gonna be busy with missions, it won't be so easy to be together. Far off, Minato paused in the act of quietly packing up. A fierce yearning flashed in his eyes. He wanted to go, so badly. To eat with Kushina, but his gaze brushed Ryo's unchanged, unreadable face, and the memory of that slash. Minato's hand slid up to his neck. A chill climbed his spine. He had no doubt, if he asked to join them, that blade Ryo always seemed to keep in the dark would be at his throat in the next breath. He didn't even have the courage to try. Forget it. Staying alive matters more. Makoto was carefully adjusting her new protector, trying to make it sit neatly and elegantly amid her black hair. At Kushina's invitation, her heart skipped, and joy flooded in. Eat with Ryokan. This wasn't a dream, was it? But the next second, that bright flame dimmed a notch. She stole a look at Ryo's face. Dinner with him. Would he agree? Would he think she was intruding? Would he find her annoying? A thread of timidity and inferiority she couldn't stop bubbled up. In front of the one you like, anyone becomes small. Hesitating, Makoto twisted the hem of her clothes, head ducked, voice soft and unsure. I'd really love to, wouldn't it be, bothering Ryokan? Her voice dwindled, smaller and smaller, until it was barely the buzz of a mosquito, cautious, testing. Ryo's gaze skimmed over Makoto, head bowed, pitiful in a way that mixed acting with something painfully real. It's all right. Molten sunset spilled along the road to Ryo's place, and across the three walking shoulder to shoulder. The air still held a trace of the graduation bustle, but around them a quieter warmth was settling. Kushina took the middle, hooking one arm through Ryo's and the other through Makoto's, steps light and bouncy, humming off-key, already having tossed her earlier threat to the wind. Hurry, I'm starving. My stomach's protesting. She jostled Ryo's arm, all pretense of poise gone. Being looped so openly through Ryo's arm set Makoto's cheeks pink again, but she kept her surface grace and smiled along. I'm really looking forward to it. Don't worry. Kushina thumped her chest. Thud, then winked at Makoto. Prepare to have your jaw drop. He plays it cool, but when he takes a knife to the board, now that's speed. She talked with her hands too. And when he cooks, the aroma floats down 2 streets. Eat it once and, who needs barbecue? Inside, Makoto was a knot of curiosity and nerves. She wanted to know everything about Ryo. And now, step into his private space, taste food he made with his own hands. Perfect. Outwardly she nodded with a smile. You've praised him so much, I'm excited. But her eyes kept drifting to Ryo's stark profile, and her heart beat faster. At the door, Ryo slid out a key and clicked the lock. He pushed the door open on a room so simple it was almost bare. A low table, a few floor cushions. The only real feature was the kitchen, spotless, precisely ordered. A clear, clean scent, like him. Sit wherever, Ryo said at last. He toed off his shoes and walked straight to the kitchen. Make yourself at home, Makoto. For real. Kushina, obviously an old hand here, kicked off her shoes and bolted to a cushion, patting the spot beside her. Moments after they had gone in, a gold-haired shadow flickered into being in the alley's shade down the way. Minato leaned against the wall, chest tight. He had followed from a distance the whole way, terrified of getting too close, terrified Ryo's awful sensitivity would catch him. Now he stared at the closed door. Kushina's clear, happy voice leaked faintly through. His heart felt dunked in lemon water, sour and stinging. A get-together, at Ryo's place. The thought chilled his fingertips. Go in. He hadn't the guts. He could picture too clearly how awkward, how unwanted, his appearance would be. The thought of giving up wound around him like a vine. Minato's mouth twisted into a bitter half-smile. Even his golden hair seemed dimmer in the sinking sun. He took one last look, long, reluctant, at that shut door, as if he could see through it to the red-haired figure inside. Forget it. Kushina's happy right now. That should be enough. Right. A great emptiness washed him under. He didn't hesitate anymore. He turned and slipped away into the deepening dusk, almost like fleeing. His back looked indescribably lonely. To be continued. Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond. Hollow Diamond 1 bonus chapter will be released for every 100 power stones. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on pad if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. 13 comments 0 vote. Chapter 53. Hokage does. While the little group at Ryo's place was happily savoring their graduation night, elsewhere. Hokage's office. Moonlight outside was so white it hurt, cold as a sheet in a morgue. Inside, a human sauna crossed with a second-hand smoke gas chamber. The stench of smoke, sweat, and the mildewed rot of old paperwork mixed into something cloying enough to make a man drunk. Under the dingy lamp, files were stacked into swaying towers, ready at any moment to deliver the Hokage a buried alive ending. The third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the ninja hero of Konoha, had no hero in him now. He was slumped in his oversized chair like his bones had been pulled out. The ravines in his old face were carved deep with dread and resentment. His brows were cinched so tight they had knotted. A pipe hung at the corner of his mouth. The ember had long since died, leaving only a smear of stale tar. His fingers tapped the wooden armrest, talk, 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 monotonous and edgy, a death knell in a room too quiet. Team assignments, damn these graduation team assignments, he forced the words through his teeth, each one chewed to pulp and spat out, hot with temper. A dull thump. His palm smacked a scroll hard enough to make the desk jump. The name on the header blurred from the impact, Uzumaki Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina, Hiruzen growled around the cold pipe, a volcano muffled under his voice. Which squad do I stuff her in? Which thick-skulled Jonin wants this burning potato? There was no one else in the office. Even his personal Anbu had been pressed back into the shadows by the heavy pressure in the room. He didn't need to mind his image. Ninja heroes, pent-up frustration spilled out in very civilized words. Nine Tails Jinchuriki, original sin stamped on the birth record. A responsibility, and a live explosive. One hiccup on a mission and the team leader will be blown sky-high on the spot. But isolate her, treat her differently. That sort of long accumulating loneliness and resentment, the kind that could corrode diamond, would rot her out. Hiruzen dragged on his pipe. Only the cold taste of tar hit his tongue, sending him hacking, face turning red. No one wanted to take this one, but someone had to. Vines of hassle ran rampant through his head, knotting his temples into a pounding ache. And at the root of that throb was another name, Ryo. At the thought, his tapping hand jerked. The pipe nearly slipped from his teeth. The blank, near-empty look of that boy at the training ground slammed into his mind with a palpitation of pressure. The next instant, the one scene he least wanted to recall crashed back, the chasm torn through the earth, bottomless. The slash, crimson as lava, condensed to substance. And all he did was flick a scabbard. That instant of destruction, that pure, unreasonable crushing, was carved into Hiruzen's memory at bedrock depth. Combat power comparable to a cage, he muttered. The knuckles of his pipe hand blanched and creaked. A 12-year-old cage. That was a monster walking on two legs. The problem was that this guy was like a block. Ryo didn't need any squad support. He was a oneman, self-propelled disaster. Ha! Smoke puffed out. Hiruzen remembered the toe-curling fiasco on Hokage Rock. He had nearly sung the lines like a chant. Result. Ryo never even lifted a lid. That stare said plainly, "Are you trying to teach me how to live?" The brat was a block of ice. No sense of belonging. No bonds. The only exception, the Uzumaki hellion, Kushina, equally lawless. She alone could chip a crack into that glacier. And everyone else, in Ryo's eyes, just obstacles while alive, wasted space after they are dead. Bonds, we need to pile on the damn bonds. Hiruzen bit down on the pipe stem. It was a wonder the thing didn't snap. With someone like Ryo, extinction-grade potential and a perverse temperament, you can't just sit back. You need something to tie him down. Tie him tight. Uzumaki Kushina was a steel cable looped around one of that primordial beast's legs. Not enough. Nowhere near enough. The more cables, the better. The thicker, the better. 1,000 threads to mire the beast in a warm bog. Sigh, say what you will, Jiraiya's the easy one. Obedient. Likes smut like I do. His pupil, Namikaze Minato, the obedient type too. Good heir to the will of fire. A proper disciple. A proper grand disciple. The comparison soured his mood further. Kushina and Ryo, they were the ceiling of the problem child world. Chapter 54. Teammates bonus. Hiruzen's head throbbed. He massaged the hammering temples and dragged a team sheet scroll forward. It unfurled. Inked names shone under the light. Most had notes and lines drawn, first pass assignment ideas. Only at the very top, two names stood alone, like sharp icicles catching the eye, Uzumaki Kushina and Kamiyama Ryo. Below them, the prospective leader, he had filled in after long thought, Tsunade. Memory pulled him back to a certain late night. On the eve of her departure for the meat grinder that was the aim front, Tsunade had slammed the desk and bellowed words that now rang with painful clarity, each one like a heated kunai chiseling at his skull. That little Uchiha girl, Uchiha Makoto, you will put her in my squad. In my students' team. You hear me? Uchiha Makoto. Add her to Tsunade's squad. Put her with Ryo. You are the bona fide Senju princess, granddaughter of the first, Hashirama Senju. Tobirama is your granduncle. And the Uchiha, the Senju's 1,000-year enemies, Onondaga war and blood feud. Konoha has been around nearly 40 years. The unwritten rule among the top brass is, be wary of the Uchiha, keep your distance, keep them pressed. It's political gospel, marrow deep. And now you want to enlist an Uchiha into your inner circle squad. Add your, he had nearly shouted the rest in her face. But Tsunade's golden brown eyes had bored into him, silent, merciless. This hellcat had smashed the Hokage's desk before. If she wanted her way, she would happily give the whole building a renovation. And she was about to lead a unit to the rain-soaked meat grinder. No matter how stifled he felt, Hiruzen wasn't going to break a commander's heart on the eve of war. Uchiha Makoto, Kushina's best friend, he muttered, forcing the boil back down. His clouded eyes turned quick behind the smoke. Intel on the Uchiha girl flashed past, talent above average, temperament gentle. Among her years she was near the top, but not a once-in-a-century prodigy. The critical point, she was extremely close to Uzumaki Kushina. Inseparable, widely known besties. Hiruzen's pipe hand froze. A clear, crucial link snapped into place. Uzumaki Kushina, Ryo's only evident bond. The only warmth in that mass of ice. The only one who left a mark on that glacier. And Uchiha Makoto, Kushina's most intimate, trusted partner. If he stuffed Makoto into Tsunade's squad, into Ryo's team, what did that mean? It meant that beside Kushina, beside Ryo, there would be a fully controllable anchor, tied directly to the Hokage's line. A secondary cable tied to the primary cable named Kushina. It would reinforce a chain of bonds that was shaky to begin with. Is she not Kushina's most trusted sister? Sisterhood, perfect for a bundle of tea. Hammer her into the Hokage's core team, and that vine would wrap Kushina, then inevitably climb Ryo's towering trunk. Is Tsunade's demand dumb luck, or is that brain of hers sharper than it looks? Kushina, the warhead, must go into a team. Ryo, the glacier, needs his bonds thickened. Tsunade's ridiculous demand to add Uchiha Makoto. It just might kill two birds with one stone. And Tsunade was marching to war. Could he really deny her and expect her not to flip a table? Besides, none of these four were easy. Kushina, special status and born hot-headed. Ryo, broken to your strength and icy, hard to handle. Tsunade, willful, reckless, and a drunk to boot. Tired of the mess? Then bundle it. Dump all 4 walking troublemakers, Tsunade, Ryo, Kushina, Uchiha Makoto, into one basket. Let them torment each other. Tsunade is the designated team leader. The Nine-Tails candidate belongs best with her. Ryo, that bristling spike, gets the only hammer that might dent him, results not guaranteed. As for Uchiha Makoto, you wanted her. Fine, have her. With a bow on top. Haha, Tsunade, Hiruzen leisurely relit his pipe. The spicy smoke rolled into his lungs with the sweet sting of revenge. He could almost see it. Tsunade facing this chimera of a squad, 1 baby-tailed beast time bomb, 1 glacier of a prodigy, and a girl from the ancestral enemy clan. What face would the Senju princess wear? Shock, fury, or bleak despair before she remade the training field with a single monstrous punch? You made an outrageous request, now shoulder this gigantic black pot. Pressure. Good. You handpick them. Bite down and swallow. You are Konoha's princess. You are its greatest medical ninja. He could even picture her booting his office door open, bottle in hand, cursing him blue. As for the Uchiha, Hiruzen's gaze drifted out the window, as if it pierced eaves and landed on the district set a little apart behind high walls, the Uchiha compound. He had no prejudice against the Uchiha. The Corps extends a hand. The cleanest political signal you could send. Especially now, in wartime. Konoha's string is drawn taut. Every drop of blood is precious. The Uchiha's Sharingan is a weapon. Offer a sweet, soothe them, let them think the Hokage favors Uchiha. They will spill more blood, push harder, plug more breaches, fill more trenches. As for the girl's ultimate destination, Hiruzen's mouth tilted around the pipe, worldly wise. Women marry, don't they? And then their hearts tilt toward home. A little Hokage line gilding, so what? After children, power and glory are just embroidery on the wedding robe. Tsunade, grow a teacher's spine and keep these 3 headaches in line, he told the lingering scent of perk bone broth in the air, tapping the pipe as if lecturing a disciple already crossing into aim. The smoke didn't feel as choking anymore. Hiruzen sank deeper into the chair, blowing slow rings. He picked up a brush and, beneath, team leader, Tsunade, wrote 3 names in a bold hand. Team leader, Tsunade. Members, Kamiyama Ryo, Uzumaki Kushina, Uchiha Makoto. To be continued. Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond. Hollow Diamond 1 bonus chapter will be released for every 100 power stones. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on pad if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 55. What's wrong you? Bonus. Inside the Hokage building of Konoha, little abacuses still clattered faintly. Of course, Ryo and the others knew nothing of it. The evening wind carried the sweltering heat of a summer night, mixed with the faint chorus of insects. It drifted past the uneven rooftops of Konoha and finally settled on Ryo's quiet little courtyard. On the low table lay scattered utensils. The faint aroma of food still lingered in the air, the cold remnants reflecting the silence after a recently ended dinner. But the atmosphere was taut, like a bowstring pulled to its limit. Kushina stood by the table, her hands unconsciously gripping the hem of her skirt. Her vivid red hair fell forward over her brow, framing eyes filled with desperate determination. She drew in a breath as though mustering all her courage. Her voice trembled just enough to betray her unease as it pierced the silence of the little courtyard. Ryo, tomorrow is graduation and team assignments. Do you want us to be on the same team? The hope in her words burned so fiercely it could almost scorch. Uchiha Makoto sat quietly on a cushion a little further away, her head lowered. In her hands, a plain handkerchief twisted tightly, her fingertips whitening with the force of her grip. She too was waiting. Ryo's eyes passed over Kushina's strained attempt at composure. In their depths flickered an emotion he himself tried carefully to hide, habitual avoidance or simply the clumsy defense of a boy who couldn't handle a feeling this raw. And just like countless times before, the phrase carved into his bones as a shield slipped out of his mouth almost by instinct. I don't care. It was like lighting a fuse. In an instant, Kushina's fragile calm snapped. Kamiyama Ryo. Her voice shot up an octave, sharp as glass shattering in someone's face. You're a complete and utter idiot. Her bright eyes brimmed with tears, a blur of grievance and rage. She wiped her eyes hard, but the harder she wiped the more the tears streamed until they soaked her face. Damn it. She stomped her foot furiously. From now on, her voice shook with humiliation and heartbreak, if I ever speak to you again, then I'm a dog. Woof. Before the words had even faded, she spun around, refusing him another glance. With all the wounded fury of a small beast lashed by a whip, she shoved open the half-closed door and stormed out into the dense, suffocating night. In a blink, she was gone. Ryokan. Makoto, who had been pretending to sit still like a doll, suddenly leapt up. Her persona shattered completely. That soft and gentle mask cracked apart like broken glass, leaving nothing but sharp fragments. In her eyes, once so tender, burned a fire as cold and cutting as blades. You know perfectly well that Kushina likes you. It's not just today, not just yesterday, it's always been like this. But you never give her a straight answer. You let her cling to hope again and again, only to crush it with your own hands. What do you think she is to you? Someone to toy with. Someone whose feelings don't matter. Her breath hitched sharply, her chest rising and falling as her words lashed like whips. Then came the knife, the one word sharp enough to cut through his chest. Scumbag. Makoto threw him a glare that carried all the contempt of a woman who had once been blind to a man's true face. She turned and stormed out. The door slammed shut behind her with a heavy thud, the echo reverberating in the suddenly dead silent house. Ryo stood frozen. Her accusations resounded in his ears again and again. She likes you. You know it. You're playing with her heart. Scumbag. The cruel reality of the ninja world clashed with the ideals he'd carried from his past life. This was no safe haven for childhood innocence. Children of 7 or 8 were thrown onto battlefields that ground them into meat. Fragile shoulders bore kunai taller than themselves. 13 or 14-year-old girls could already be wives, even mothers. Here, cruel slaughter and premature romance weren't exceptions, they were the rhythm of life itself. And what was he afraid of? He was binding himself with the shackles of a world long gone, civilized moral codes and rules that had no place in a land where death was always a breath away. Age differences, responsibilities, future plans. In a world where no one knew if their head would still be on their shoulders tomorrow, all of it was a joke. The biggest joke of all was himself, Kamiyama Ryo, a hypocrite from head to toe. Worse still, his constant dodging, his false restraint, his cowardly evasions had smothered the foundation of true strength. Faith. Absolute, unshakable conviction. Faith that said, if I choose to act, one act. If I choose to kill, I kill. If I choose to love, I love. No hesitation. No apologies. But what was he suppressing? Not something foreign. Not something wrong. It was himself. A part of himself as real as bone and blood. If he couldn't even confront his own demons, his own shadows, how could he ever claim true conviction? Bullshit. No wonder his hockey always slammed against a cold wall. No wonder his power felt like sand with no foundation. Damn it. His hand whipped up and slapped his own cheek with a thunderous crack. The sting burned like fire. 5 red finger marks stood out clearly. But the pain was nothing compared to the release. It was like he'd torn open a filthy dam within his soul, letting all the sludge of hypocrisy, guilt, and false morality wash away in an instant. Cold wind rushed through the void, scouring it clean. Fuck it all. His voice burst out of his throat, low but shaking the night. I, Kamiyama Ryo, am a complete fraud, a poser, a first-rate idiot, a hypocrite of the highest order. And at last, clarity. What am I pretending for? Talking about the future. In this blood-soaked world, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. The only truth is now. A roar exploded in his soul, shattering the final chain. So what if I like that red-haired little pepper? I'll say it loud. I'll protect her with everything I've got. Yes, I like Uzumaki Kushina. So what? Better to be honest than to keep running like a coward. The dam burst. The last false restraint crumbled into nothing. Like a beast long caged, he broke free. His spirit blazed clear, shining faith. And then, boom, something deep inside was triggered. An immense wave of power erupted from his soul, primal and overwhelming, like an ancient god awakening from beneath the earth. It wasn't chakra. It was pure will, pure faith given form. Conqueror's Haki. The air itself froze. Invisible shockwaves erupted from him, warping light and ripping the silence. The courtyard shuddered as if struck by a meteor. Trees outside trembled violently, leaves stripped and shredded into a storm of green fragments. The very ground cracked beneath his feet, the density of the air pressing down as though demanding submission. Meanwhile, in the Hokage building. Hokage-sama, something's wrong. An Anbu burst in, voice panicked, face pale with shock. Sarutobi Hiruzen shot to his feet, his half-finished pipe falling to the desk. The ink on the emergency order he had just signed, placing all clans on war footing, was still wet. Calm yourself. Speak clearly. Hiruzen's voice was thunder, firm with authority. The Anbu gulped air, forcing composure, but his words rushed out in fear. Preliminary assessment, it's not a physical attack. It's some kind of massive spiritual shockwave. Over 2/3 of the village, civilians, genin, even many chunin. His voice cracked. They all collapsed instantly, as if their souls were struck by an invisible hammer. What? Even Hiruzen's composure cracked. His fingers clenched his pipe so hard the knuckles widened. Kumo, Iwa, some new weaponized genjutsu. How had they slipped in undetected? To cripple half the village in an instant, it was unthinkable. And Mito-sama? Hiruzen demanded. Mito-sama's sensing abilities are heavily disrupted. She's forming a barrier to contain the shockwave while trying to trace the source. She believes this isn't genjutsu. It's something else. A manifestation of will itself, a storm of pure spirit. Will, spirit. Hiruzen's mind reeled. Who could manifest will as a storm strong enough to shatter souls? Impossible. And yet, at the epicenter, Ryo's eyes flared with scarlet light. Not Sharingan red, but something older, more primal. A divine glow that pierced the veil of the world. His senses surged outward, ignoring space, weaving through the village like invisible nerves. Observation Haki, awakened. The entire village unfolded in his mind's eye, every street, every house, every person. Not just Konoha. His will spread like roots, hungering for more. He saw them all. The villagers collapsed like wheat before a scythe. Hiruzen's fear, Mito's barrier straining against the storm, the raging chakra of the nine tails beneath her seal, all of it was clear. And then, a burning, familiar presence. Kushina. Her life force, fading, almost extinguished. Wrapped in a malicious aura, cold and venomous, coiled like a serpent. She was being dragged away at unnatural speed, carried by a powerful chakra radiating thunder. Southwest, toward Kumo. Those bastards. Rage ignited, pure and unrelenting. His killing intent surged, a volcano erupting. You're dead. The ground beneath him split apart in a spiderweb of cracks, stone and soil exploding upward. The trash of Kumo, you're already corpses. At his waist, his sword trembled. Shing. The Kusanagi sword tore free of its sheath, its blade not shining, but swallowing the light around it like a hungry abyss. Ryo's foot slammed down, shattering the courtyard into rubble. His body became a streak of blood and shadow, an arrow loosed toward the northwest. Faster, faster, faster. The air screamed around him, the village itself rattling as he ripped through like a living storm. Unstoppable. His destination was clear, beyond the wall. To intercept. To kill. To be continued. 20 comments 0 vote. Chapter 56. Under the Moon. A few minutes earlier, on the outskirts of Konoha, a dark alley lay silent. Target confirmed. Uzumaki clan, Nine Tails Jinchuriki candidate. That Uchiha girl is just extra baggage. The man with a jagged lightning tattoo across his face, codename Raiga, spoke in a low, gravelly tone, his voice quivering with bloodthirsty excitement. Stay sharp. Avoid the ANBU's eyes. If we pull this off, the Raikage's reward will let us live in luxury for the rest of our lives. MMMPH. Agonizing pain and suffocating fear clutched Uzumaki Kushina's throat. She bit down hard on her lip, forcing the sound back into her chest. The sting of the ambush on her neck still pulsed, her vision swam. Cold branches lashed against her face without mercy. Beside her, her friend Makoto had also been bound, her face pale as paper, eyes shut tight in unconsciousness. Kushina's heart plummeted into an icy abyss. It wasn't her own capture that terrified her most. It was the despair gnawing at her mind. Ryo, are you still angry with me? That whole storming off in anger routine earlier tonight had been her and Makoto's carefully planned trap. First stir his guilt with a show of unreasonable temper, then storm out, giving him the chance to chase after her and make peace. A perfect script, but none of their calculations had accounted for Kumo's spies striking at this very moment. Her fiery red hair stood out too much. As she struggled, she stealthily tore off strands and let them fall, marking the ground like drops of burning blood. She had done this all along the path, hoping desperately for even the faintest chance. But her heart's hollow throb only filled with icy despair. Ryo, did you see it? Will you follow my trail? Or was that cold? I don't care, really the truth. Will you even care if I live or die? That thought, bitter and self-mocking, drowned in despair, and tears finally broke free, only to be ripped away by the rushing wind. Move faster. We have to reach the forest of death before Konoha locks the village down, hissed a voice from deeper in the alley. 3 shadows slipped like phantoms through the night. One, built like a tower, codename Iron Pillar, carried a writhing sack over his shoulder. A strand of vivid red hair jutted stubbornly from the sack's mouth. Another, lean and wiry, codename Lightning Flash, cradled the unconscious black-haired girl. Moonlight glanced across Makoto's pale, delicate face, lifeless and unmoving. Raiga led at the front, eyes sharp and predatory. Boss, something's wrong. Iron Pillar froze mid-step, his voice urgent. Konoha's patrol network, it felt like something smashed it. So many signatures vanished at once. Even the village barrier is shaking like it's about to collapse. Don't care, Raiga barked, though a flicker of exultation flashed in his eyes. Heaven helps us. Whatever that disturbance is, it's the perfect cover. Focus your chakra where it matters, getting to the forest of death. His cruel gaze locked on the sack over Iron Pilar's shoulder, killing intent radiating. That cunning red-haired brat. She's been leaving hair strands as markers all along. Iron Pillar, shut her up. For good. Knock her out cold. Yes. Iron Pilar's growl rumbled as he raised his chakra-hardened hand, blade-like, and swung for Kushina's fragile neck within the sack, a blow that could shatter bone. At the edge of the forest of death, moonlight strained through dense branches, casting twisted, ghastly shadows across the ground. The air reeked of damp earth and the looming stench of death. Iron Pillar, stop. Raiga's voice tore through the night, not in warning, but in terror. Because in that instant, a suffocating wave of killing intent crashed down upon them. It was absolute, honed, and colder than glacial ice, clamping down on their hearts and souls like an iron vice. It wasn't chakra, it was a curse from the depths of the underworld. Iron Pilar's devastating strike froze midair. Not by choice, his body, his hand, his very soul had been locked in place, paralyzed by that murderous will. Even his pores screamed in agony. And in that frozen heartbeat, crack, thud, the sack's crude strap snapped under Kushina's struggling weight, sending it crashing heavily to the ground. Dust swirled as fiery red hair spilled free, bursting from the sack like flames. Kushina's face flushed crimson from suffocation, wrists raw and bleeding from the ropes. Her blue eyes glared through dizziness and terror, fixed stubbornly on survival. Her head spun, ears rang, but she had heard Raiga's panicked scream, and she had felt that soul-freezing intent. It's him. It has to be him. No time to think further. A blade of darkness cleaved the night. It wasn't light. It was the absence of it, absolute and oppressive. Not flying toward them, but as if it had always been there. So fast the very sound of air tearing couldn't keep up. Iron Pilar's neck, flesh and bone, might as well have been paper. Slice. Crash. A whisper of steel, a spray of blood. A crimson geyser erupted from his severed neck, soaking tree bark, earth, and Kushina's terrified face. His massive head rolled to the ground, eyes wide in frozen fear. The headless corpse lingered upright for a few seconds, still poised to strike, before toppling like a felled tower. Blood and dirt splattered in a grotesque spray. Iron Pillar. Lightning flashes scream tore from his throat, a sound of sheer animal horror. The scene, Iron Pilar's head rolling, the blood still spraying, that suffocating killing aura, shattered his reason. Sweden. Mizu Shuriken, water release, water shuriken. Survival instinct drained every drop of chakra from his body. With a desperate roar, he hurled Makoto's limp form toward the shadows, the source of that terror. A distraction, a shield, he didn't know, didn't care. At the same instant, his own body twisted into a high-pressure stream of water, a distorted blur tearing into the distance. All that remained was vapor and despair. Clack. A single, soft sound rang in that blood-soaked silence. The shadow ahead, Ryo, shifted his stance by half a step. His left hand flashed, nothing but a blur, and caught Makoto midair. With effortless precision, he cradled her unconscious form against him, steady and gentle. He didn't even glance at her pale face. His eyes, dark red as if dripping blood, pierced through lightning flash's watery clone. The gaze cut through to the true body fleeing in desperation. No anger, no mockery, only judgment. The Kusanagi sword moved. A razor-thin slash of sword aura screamed across the distance. Lightning flash felt only an icy chill pierce his chest. His Raiden armor shredded like wet paper. The world dimmed. He glanced down, his heart pierced clean through. A hole the size of a fist gaped in his chest, moonlight shining through. No pain, only the hollow collapse of life draining away. His body tumbled forward, crashing heavily into the dirt, a spreading pool of blood marking his end. Silence. 2 elite Kumo Chunin, erased within seconds. The stench of blood thickened, choking the air. On the clearing's edge, Raiga stood alone. He had seen it all. Iron Pilar's headless fall, lightning flash's heart pierced in flight. Terror's claws crushed his chest, but despair burned away the last of his restraint. No retreat, he's blocked every path. The figure before him, holding a girl in his arms, was death incarnate. Ah, glory to the Raikage. Raiga's roar cracked like thunder, hands trembling as he poured every shred of chakra into them. Lightning gathered, blue-white arcs shrieking as they compressed into a blinding sphere. His face twisted into a demon's mask. Raiden, Gion, lightning release, false darkness die. Boom. A massive thunder lance tore through the clearing, scorching the night, splitting earth and air alike. It shot straight for Ryo, who still held Makoto in his arms. The attack carried all of Raiga's strength, burning life itself. Its destructive power surpassed even most Jonin techniques. The clearing left no room to dodge. The world blazed in blinding blue. But just before the thunder spear struck, Ryo raised his free hand. Calm, steady, palm open. The cataclysmic spear crashed into his palm. The roar of lightning strangled into a tortured hiss, as though countless serpents were being crushed by an invisible hand. The blinding beam dimmed, twisted, collapsed, devoured by a void. In seconds, the devastating rank jutsu disintegrated into nothing but sparks. Raiga convulsed, blood spewing from his lips. The backlash of his own technique ripped through his organs like a runaway train. He stared in disbelief as Ryo stepped forward. Step by step, across the blood and broken corpses of his comrades. Calm, unhurried. Every step slammed like a hammer on Raiga's heart. Ryo stopped 3 paces away. The wind stilled. Monster, Raiga gasped, blood trailing from his mouth. His eyes cracked with terror, his voice nothing but a rasp. You're a monster. Monster. Ryo's gaze fell upon him, calm as frozen water. Perhaps. And then he moved. Faster than thought. Faster than sound. But you touched what you shouldn't have. The Kusanagi sword whispered free. Black arcs slashed through moonlight. Raiga never even saw the strike. Only the world spinning. Slice. 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 Both arms fell from his body. Both legs severed at the knees. 4 smooth cuts, clean as mirrors. Blood fountained from the stumps, spraying across the ground in wild arcs. The meat puppet collapsed, writhing in grotesque spasms. His eyes bulged, throat bubbling with meaningless gurgles, terror frozen into his final expression. Ryo flicked his wrist. The Kusanagi sword slid back into its sheath, spotless, untouched by blood. The forest fell into silence once more. Only the whisper of the wind through the branches remained, and the corpses at Ryo's feet. A headless giant, a body with a hole through its chest. And a limbless husk, twitching in the dirt. To be continued. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 57. My Little Tomato. Bonus. Bonus for 600 PS. Hollow diamond, hollow diamond, hollow diamond. The enemies who had been so arrogant moments ago didn't even have time to scream before they were reduced to steaming piles of meat on the ground. Ryo didn't even bother to lift his eyelids. Those strange, silver eyes of his cut through the choking stench of blood, locking onto the sack lying a few meters away in the dirt. From its opening, a pair of blue eyes peeked out, filled with pure terror, already spilling over with tears. Step, step, step. Ryo's boots pressed into the bloody, muddy ground with a sound like a death drum. With the unconscious Makoto still in his arms, he advanced on the sack. Murderous intent poured off him, swirling like a storm of black mist. Carefully, he laid the black-haired girl down on a patch of relatively clean earth. Then, he bent down. That dusty but powerful hand of his ripped through the coarse rope binding the sack with a single brutal tug. Moonlight and the reek of blood flooded inside. The girl with the fiery red hair, Kushina, was tied up so tightly she looked like a bundled scroll. Her slender wrists were raw, seeping blood. That unmistakable golden red hair framed her terrified face. Those sapphire eyes, which should have been bright and clear, were wide and trembling, staring at the boy who had broken her heart moments ago, only to reappear like a blood-soaked god of war torn from hell. Shame, fear, rage, grievance, everything exploded inside her at once. Her pink lips parted, and tears burst like floodwaters. Wah! Hot tears splattered into the dirt as her hopeless cries ripped through the night. Did Ryo comfort her? Say, it's okay, not a chance, not a single useless word. Instead, one hand clamped down on her trembling shoulder. The other slid beneath her knees. And then, a princess carry. Simple, direct, domineering. The act of someone who refused to be denied. Awa! Kushina's world spun. Suddenly, she was pressed into the reeking, blood-stained chest of Ryo. Wah! Fear, shock, despair, anger, her emotions, already at their limit, broke apart completely. She screamed and sobbed like a shrimp dropped into boiling water, thrashing and kicking in his arms. Her small fists rained down like hail on his chest, her cries ragged. Let me go. I don't need you to hold me. Idiot. I don't care. Didn't you say you didn't care? You hate me. You hate me. Get away from me. I don't need your fake concern. It hurts. Put me down. Her struggles pulled against her raw wrists, pain lancing through her body. Beside them, Makoto stirred awake at the noise, blinking in confusion. The sight before her stole her breath. Ryo's profile, cold and sharp as forged steel, streaked with drying blood. Moonlight crowned him in a terrible, imperious light. He held Kushina as if she were nothing, letting her fists beat against him without flinching. His stance was immovable, like a mountain. The slaughter just moments ago, the way he now carried her as if no one could defy him, it all came as naturally as breathing. His brow didn't twitch. Not once. Kushina flailed in his arms. But his arm tightened, pulling her fragile body hard into his chest. His voice, deep and steady, left no room for refusal. Don't move. The sound froze her. Her cries choked to silence, replaced by trembling hiccups, like a kitten too tired to keep mewling. She looked up, her face streaked with tears and dirt, dazed and helpless. Ryo stared back, silver eyes burning with fire, his words thundering into Kushina, into Makoto, into even the hidden watcher in the shadows. Who the hell said I don't like you? His eyes locked onto her, flames roaring within their depths. Then his lips curved faintly, arrogantly, his voice a proclamation of ownership. Because, you're mine. A deliberate pause, his tone heavy as steel. My little tomato. My one and only little tomato. Before she could even breathe, Ryo lowered his head. A kiss. Firm and cold, his lips pressed against her forehead, leaving an indelible mark. A brand. Kushina froze. Her cries, her rage, her despair, all of it detonated, not dissolved. Not melting, but exploding. Like a volcano, like a tidal wave that smashed her heart into pieces. Ryo. Her dam broke. Every ounce of emotion, every fragile pretense, collapsed in that instant. Her arms, weak and trembling, shot up to cling around his neck. She buried her face into the crook of his neck, sobbing into the blood and warmth that felt safer than the sun itself. I was so scared. I thought they'd take me. I thought I'd never come back. I thought I'd never see you again. Her tears drenched his chest, burning against his skin. I thought you hated me, thought you'd left me, she whimpered, spilling her deepest fear. Every tear pierced Ryo's soul sharper than any blade. Her trembling body, fragile as a leaf in the wind, twisted something deep inside him. It hurt worse than Tsunade's punches. He tightened his embrace, pressing his chin gently against her blood-scented hair. It's over. His voice was low, steady. I'm here. Those words. They shattered every defense Kushina had left. She didn't need to pretend anymore. She cried freely, desperately, clinging to him as if she would sink without him. Makoto could only watch in silence, her eyes wide, as the red-haired girl wept herself into Ryo's chest. And in the shadows, a golden-haired figure had arrived, following the trail of fallen strands of red hair. Namikaze Minato. His eyes widened as the scene scorched itself into his vision, Ryo, fierce and unyielding, holding Kushina as if she were his world. Her struggles collapsing into sobs. His kiss on her brow, branding her as his. Her arms clutching him, burying herself into him. Minato's heart clenched with an agony so sharp it felt like claws crushing his chest. But his eyes never looked away. Step by step, his hands loosened. Moonlight revealed his bitter smile. As long as she's safe, as long as she's happy. And he stepped back, fading into the night. This stage was no longer his. The black tide of Konoha's reinforcements surged in. At the front, Uzumaki Mito's sharp eyes fell upon the two figures at the center. Her wrinkled face bloomed into a radiant smile, girlish and triumphant. Behind her, Hiruzen strode in, his white Hokage robes heavy, his face grim. But what he saw froze him. 3 mangled corpses. Clean cuts like mirror glass. Ryo turned at last, Kushina still in his arms. His silver eyes were colder than death itself. Hiruzen's breath caught. A chill crawled down his spine. Even the hardened Hokage felt the threat of invisible blades at his throat. The Konoha shinobi behind him stiffened, their blood running cold. This boy had shed the last of his disguise. No longer human. Something else. Only Mito smiled brighter, her gaze proud, almost gleeful. Ryo's eyes flicked to her for a heartbeat, a faint nod. Then his attention returned entirely to the girl in his arms. The rest of the world, Hiruzen, the elders, the army, were nothing but rubble at the roadside. He cared only for her. Kushina, asleep now, her face streaked with tears, buried against him in exhausted trust. Hiruzen swallowed, forcing composure. Ryo, any survivors? His voice was rough, but firm. None. Ryo's tone was flat, final. All dead, like he had swatted flies. Hiruzen's face twitched, unease surging. But he suppressed it, barking orders. Anbu will handle the scene. Ryo, Kushina, Makoto, you 3 return to the village for treatment. Ryo ignored the Hokage's eyes. He adjusted his hold on Kushina carefully, lifting her with deliberate strength. Makoto. His voice was cold, but a faint gentleness lingered. Follow me. Like waking from a dream, Makoto rushed to his side, following close behind. Together, the 3 walked through the silent forest. And when they passed the shadow where Minato had stood, Ryo's gaze swept casually over it. Moonlight spilled silver across the road ahead. Konoha's towering gates loomed against the night, shadows like giants. Ryo walked forward, steady and unyielding, Kushina safe in his arms. Makoto followed close, her steps quick. The moonlight touched the girl's face in his arms, pale, tear-streaked, but peaceful at last, cradled in the embrace she had longed for. To be continued. 6 comments 0 vote. Chapter 58. Cool and trying bonus. Bonus for 700 PS. Hollow diamond hollow diamond hollow diamond. Konoha, deep night, Hokage building. Hiruzen felt his brain throb like it had been hit by a Raiden paralysis technique. Headache. Damn. He gulped a mouthful of tea so strong it was nearly black. It was bitter enough to make him bare his teeth, yet the fire in his chest only burned hotter. His rough palm slammed down on the heavy desk. The redwood surface groaned as if pushed past its limits. Ryo, you brat. Hiruzen ground his teeth, each word scraping out like ice shards from his throat. He couldn't help seeing that red-haired boy standing amid a hellscape of severed limbs and blood, Ryo, holding Uzumaki Kushina in his arms, eyes cold as permafrost. How had that kid done it? Some bizarre spiritual shockwave, some secret technique he invented. From the memorial stone to the far dorms of the academy, 2/3 of Konoha's territory, tens of thousands of people, became a wheat field scythed down in an instant. Genin, Chunin, even some Jonin who weren't alert enough, collapsed without a sound, out cold. The village barrier nearly buckled. Several ceiling core Jonin drained their chakra to the dregs and fainted, foaming at the mouth. As for civilians, it was as if an invisible mallet had cracked every skull. People were sprawled all over the streets. More horrifying than a Wideria genjutsu. Creepier than a volley of bijudama. Great. His apprentice shows off to impress a girl, and now the master has to clean it up. Tsunade. What a lovely student you've raised. Forget it. Best not to nitpick with that pair. Tsunade isn't exactly a docile kitten either. Hokage-sama. An Anbu in a tanuki mask appeared before the desk, dropped to one knee, voice hoarse from overexertion. Preliminary tally is done. Casualties. Hiruzen's heart clenched in a cold fist. He almost forgot to breathe. 0, the Anbu said quickly. Hiruzen sagged into his chair as the suffocating pressure loosened. Thank the gods. At least the terrifying shock only hit hard, it didn't kill. Otherwise, he could hang himself and spare the apologies. There are many injuries, most from falls. Some suffered backlash from overusing chakra. The worst is Akamichi Choza from a patrol team, fell from a tree and broke an arm. And a few others, the ANBU's tone turned delicate. They lost their footing in public latrines. Deeply unconscious for now, but no immediate danger to life. However, the scene requires a lot of clean water. Hiruzen's mouth twitched hard. Into the cesspit, A truly immersive Konoha cultural experience. The embarrassment was unprecedented. Maybe when they wake up, he should ship them straight to the Suna front to make contributions. Additionally, the Anbu paused, voice dropping lower. 2 bathhouses in the shopping district, multiple patrons, because the shock hit during, vigorous activity, according to witnesses, now exhibit varying degrees of, functional impairment. Hiruzen, violating the 3 shinobi taboos, and right into the crosshairs, too. Not like they'll have the face to come complain to him. Good. And one more thing. The Anbu sounded like he'd steeled himself. Tracing the residual spiritual imprint, the epicenter appears to be at the village outskirts. Correlating with the report of an unidentified flare launched toward the land of lightning just moments before the event, and with the battle traces and 3 destroyed Kumo operatives found at the edge of the Forest of Death, the evidence points to the same conclusion. Kamiyama Ryo, Hiruzen finished for him, voice rasping like sandpaper on stone. The building's soundproofing barrier seemed to tremble. Hiruzen could already picture the state of the streets. The cesspit victims wailing, bathhouse entrances clogged with gray-faced, I fear I'm done for, patrons, others cursing and clutching their skulls, panic spreading like plague. Fear needs an outlet. Anger needs a scapegoat. And where would the finger point? At the Hokage building. At his head. He tightened his grip on the pipe. Calming the masses. Not easy this time. Throw Ryo to the wolves. Never mind that the boy just saved the future Nine-Tails Jinchuriki from Kumo Anbu and awakened an almost village-level annihilation power. Hiruzen let out a cold laugh in his heart. If they tried to make Ryo the culprit, Mito would go dark instantly and dismantle the entire council. Losing Ryo would be sawing off their own foundation. Especially given Ryo's tangled bond with the future Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Kushina. To Hiruzen, it was a heaven-sent shackle. A chain to bind this humanoid calamity. Force him to death or drive him to defect. Hiruzen wasn't senile yet. The Hokage line's core combat power. Konoha's future, touch him. Onoki will laugh himself awake, Hiruzen muttered. Besides, who had the stature to take the blame? Even if Ryo had done a good thing, villagers would see him as a scapegoat, no authority, no acceptance. If someone is to shoulder a blame this big, they need status and prestige. Which means they need a perfect black pot. A sacrificial lamb. And one that stands up to scrutiny, that draws most of the heat. Hirazen's clouded eyes gleamed with calculation through the smoke. He took a long pull of the harsh tobacco. Kumo, those mangled spies were ready-made offerings. But the big, muscle-brained brutes were far away, across the hot springs and iron. Blaming them would scratch no itch for the public. The daimyo of the Land of Fire would die laughing. It would only make the Hokage look like a coward shirking responsibility. Aiwa, they had weight, but the third Tsuchikage could turtle better than a turtle. Why provoke the stone while the sand war wasn't even resolved? That's not diverting conflict, that's opening two fronts to die on. Suna. Best target. The western front with Suna was a meat grinder. Blood from Konoha and the sand could dye the whole wind country red. Reports of deaths arrived daily. Konoha's hatred for Suna was dry pine waiting for a spark. Perfect. A ready, weighty scapegoat with genuine blood feud. Damn Sunagaker, Hirazen said, voice cold with decision, knuckles tapping the desk. They deployed a covert spiritual secret arts strike team, exploited a weak point in our barrier, and launched this large-scale harassment. Aim. Paralyze our rear, break supply lines, shake the front's morale. Our warriors' blood isn't even dry, and those scorpions in the desert reach for our wives and children. He grew more fluent as he spoke, eyes lighting with the fervor of manufacturing facts. As for those dead Kumo spies, disposable pawns Suna used to mislead us, diversion tactics. Their sinister intent is clear. He patched the plan on the fly. Pin all blame on Suna. Push the propaganda hard. Steer the civilians toward hating Suna, the path of least resistance. Understood, Hokage-sama, said the Anbu under the Tanuki mask, eyes flashing. Yet the gravity on Hirazen's face didn't fade. Civilians were easy, serve them steaming bowls of will of fire and remind them of Suna's blood debts, and they'd be chanting for vengeance. But the shinobi clans, the old foxes at the power table. The senior advisors, would they buy it? The clans see too clearly. Hirazen exhaled a long plume of smoke. In the haze, he seemed to glimpse the elders, cold, scrutinizing eyes. Foxes, all of them. If we want to run this trick before them, we need seasoning. Stir them up from the inside. His fingers tapped the desk's cold edge. Thud, thud, thud. His gaze fell on a name at the bottom right of a scroll, marked with the Uchiha fan. Uchiha Makoto. A habitual thought rose from the depths of his mind. Uchiha, Konoha's perennial dartboard, the best at taking the pot. Every clan had wariness and bias toward the Uchiha, engraved in bone. Let them shoulder a little more. Notify intelligence, Hirazen said, voice low as a chill wind from underground, brooking no dissent. Before the council meeting, let some rumors fly. Subtly, mention that, amid the spiritual storm, someone sensed extremely powerful and unstable yin release waves. Direction. Roughly pointing to the edge of the Uchiha compound. Details should be vague, but don't miss the keywords. Yin release, Sharingan traits, verge of losing control, let the rumor smolder like a grass fire and reach the perfect heat right before the council. Understood. The ANBU's body twitched ever so slightly. Yes. MMH. Wearied yet savoring a flicker of control, Hirazen closed his eyes. The Uchiha have gotten good at bearing blame in the cracks these years. Debts pile high, but they don't crush you. For Makoto to enter Tsunade's unit and become a core disciple of the Hokage line, bearing a little harmless rumor is a contribution to clan and village. Makoto is Kushina's closest friend. Good. Nail them firmly into our camp. This small grievance, Uchiha Shana, that old fossil, will swallow it. He flicked his hand, dismissing the Anbu to carry out orders that would whip Konoha's upper echelons into another storm. The office fell silent once more. But Hirazen couldn't relax yet. A heavier shadow pressed on his chest, Mitokado Homura and Udatane Kaharu. His peers, custodians with long, sticky fingers and lingering influence. They weren't like the clans who could be bought off with benefits or divided by rumors. They stared at power like vultures eyeing carrion. He could almost see Kaharu's pinched, joyless face masked in anguish, and, let's see how you fix this, hypocrisy. Damn it, I still have to settle those two, Hirazen muttered, pushing to his feet. Danzo was easier, he could carry the blame. And as Hokage, Hirazen could keep him caged. If Danzo were still in Konoha, this would be simpler. He'd almost become the scapegoat cage. His pipe had long since burned out, only cold ash remained. He rapped it on the desk, frowning. There was only one person who could silence those two completely. Who wouldn't care for their carping about political impact and village stability, and who could muzzle the clans as well? Hiruzen looked out the window into the ink-black night. At the village's edge, it was as if a silent, heavy mountain stood there, warding off the noise. Uzumaki Mito. Night cooled like water, sinking deeper. Mito's residence lay far from the center, quiet, layered courtyards, air rich with the scent of leaves. But the moment he stepped past the gate, the calm broke. A weight settled on his heart. Mito wasn't in her bedroom. She waited in a simple tea room. On a small brazier, a kettle simmered, bubbles rising in steady, soft gloops, steam curling upward. She sat on a cushion, posture still straight, but weariness shadowed her brows, a heaviness of burden she could not quite smooth away. Kushina was likely soothed and sent to bed. Sit, Suru. Mito's voice was calm, unreadable. She gestured to the cushion opposite. Hiruzen obeyed, kneeling. He shed his public mask, revealing the worry, and the plea, of Sarutobi Hiruzen. No time for small talk. He went straight in. Mito-sama, the situation is extremely delicate. He laid it out cleanly. The impact, the dual pressure from the masses and the upper ranks. No embellishment, but each cold number and inference weighed 1,000 pounds. So, Suna for the civilians, Hiruzen said, locking eyes with Mito's still bright gaze. And Uchiha for the shinobi circle, the bait, the buffer. But, Mito-sama, Homura and Kaharu, and some clans, they need an unquestionable conclusion. He put weight on that last word. Silence for a heartbeat, only the kettle's near boiling rattle, like a taut heartstring quivering. Mito watched the rising steam. After a while, she spoke, soft, distant, cutting through all pretense. You want this old body to shut their mouths. To spend my remaining days in what name I have left to shield that child, Ryo, and press down every so-called concern. Hiruzen's heart leapt to his throat. His cheeks warmed with shame. To ask a woman who had given her life to Konoha to spend the last of her strength and prestige, blatantly, was hard even to say. He swallowed, ashamed, but resolute. Lady Mito, I have no other choice. Ryo is Kushina's lock, and Konoha's sword. He cannot be broken on this blame. He drew a deep breath, spine straightening, eyes bright. You have guarded Konoha for decades, held on to the first Hokage's dream. I beg you, guard it once more. Not for me, Sarutobi Hiruzen, but so Kushina has the pillar she accepts, and so the village's foundation does not crack. I will bear all effects and costs. Let the infamy fall on me alone. He spoke the last line like a hammer blow. The tea room stilled. Mito finally turned her head. Eyes that had seen too much rose and fell on Hiruzen's anxious yet unwavering face. No blame, no anger. Only a quiet compassion, and understanding. Hey, so the will of fire really has become your heirloom, Mito murmured, shaking her head, the faintest, most complicated smile tugging her lips, half sigh, half release. She didn't answer his request directly. Instead, she dropped another stone into the still water, her voice quiet, but shaking the air. Recall Tsunade. To be continued. Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond. Hollow Diamond 1 bonus chapter will be released for every 100 power stones. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on pad if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. 10 comments 0 vote. Chapter 59. It's time to find a new landlord for the Nine Tails. Hiruzen's eyes flew wide. For a moment he thought he'd misheard. Recall Tsunade. Now. But the front line. Mito cut him off. Her voice was steady, but carried the finality of dust settling. I can't hold on much longer. Even the Ninetails chakra that's only acting on animal instinct is almost beyond my control. She slowly lifted her thin, withered hands, hands that had once maintained the strongest tailed beast seal. They trembled. While there's still a little strength left in these old bones, while I can still suppress that beast, it's time for Kushina. Hiruzen felt struck by lightning. Lady Mito had decided to transfer the Nine Tails now. Terror and sorrow drowned out every calculation in an instant. It meant the first Hokage's wife, the true anchor of Konoha, was about to burn the last wick of her life. Mito-sama, isn't this too hasty? You. Mito raised a hand to still him. Deep in those aged eyes flashed a strange light, not grief, but a settled resolve. She remembered the blood-streaked boy beneath the moon declaring, "My little tomato," and Kushina burying her face in his chest to cry without restraint. Don't worry, Suru. Mito's voice pressed down his panic, the firmness in it even overshadowing her fatigue. Kushina has found the light she wants. That is a lock stronger than any seal. Her heart has a place to rest. This old woman can hand the burden to the young. Her gaze focused on Hiruzen's face again, calm as if entrusting a 1,000-pound weight. As for today's incident, I know what to do. Go and do what you must. This old woman will preside over the High Council meeting. It was as if a mountain that had been crushing Hiruzen's chest vanished. Tremendous relief surged up with a sharp, inexplicable ache. He bowed low until his forehead struck the cold floor, voice choking with emotion as he forced out 2 words. Quote. Thank you. Uzumaki Mito waved weakly, saying no more. The gesture clearly dismissed him. She needed a final stretch of quiet to gather the last threads of strength, for the storm to come, and for the ultimate ritual. Hiruzen withdrew from the tea room with respectful haste, suppressing his breath. When he closed the door that separated the tea room's warmth from the night's chill, then lifted his head to the Konoha sky still turbulent with the aftertaste of chaos, a granite-hard resolve gathered once more in the eyes of the ninja hero. Mito, by her sacrifice and resolve, had cleared the board for him. The High Council meeting. Let them come. Let's see who dares stand in the Hokage's way. The last darkness before dawn ripped open. A pale first light slid through the thick bulletproof glass of the great conference room, sketching everything in cold clarity. The sun had not fully risen. Konoha's towering walls cast vast shadows over a land just waking from a silent calamity. In the decision chamber deep within the Hokage building, the air was thicker than Hiruzen's pipe smoke, laced with the tang of blood and powder and a subtler reek of power plays. Uzumaki Mito arrived very early. In a plain, dark violet kimono, she sat quietly at the head. Her posture was still upright and elegant, but her lids were lowered, hands folded inside wide sleeves, a fatigue tempered by years of wind and frost settling about her. She was the village's anchor, and also a lone lamp about to gutter out. Hiruzen sat at her left, face a stony calm, fingertips tapping the hardwood in a rhythm edged with impatience. For the first time, the white Hokage cloak felt like a mud-smeared prison uniform. The door opened without a sound. Mitokado Homura entered first, slicked back hair, gold-rimmed glasses, advisor uniform with no crease out of place, his face arranged in the Konoha is doomed mask of heavy concern. Udatane Kaharu followed, features drawn and sharp as a bow at full draw. Her cloudy triangular eyes locked on Hiruzen, and her lips pinched as if she'd just bitten a raw bitter melon. They sat, bringing not just bodies, but a low-pressure front of scrutiny and accusation. Silence. Even breathing felt weighted, pressing on the chest. The meeting hadn't started, but the smoke of war already curled on the table. Homura struck first. His palm slammed the table, teacups jolting as he shattered the staged stillness. Hiruzen, he drawled, scolding and heartbroken. Look outside. Konoha, our Konoha, what does it look like now? Half the village, tens of thousands, scythed down like wheat. Shinobi and civilians alike. This is your peace under your governance. Can't even guard our home. A disgrace. An utter disgrace. Spittle almost reached Hiruzen's face. Kaharu's voice stabbed in, frosted needles dipped in poison, each word aimed at Mito. That power last night, Mito-sama, our strongest barrier in Konoha, did the enemy slip in right under your nose? Is this negligence? She didn't name anyone, but the arrow pointed straight at Kushina, the unappointed yet inevitable core of the storm, the future Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Homura landed the follow-up, the lenses of his glasses flashing with political venom. Yes. A thorough investigation. This was clearly a vicious attack aimed at the Uzumaki, at our future Jinchuriki. Those Kumo vermin got what they deserved, but for them to penetrate so deep and aim for the Nine Tails, there must be a bigger hand behind them. Mito-sama, do you know any hidden details? Anything could be critical to the village's survival. He framed the incident as an attack on the Jinchuriki, ducking managerial blame and pinning the pot on Uzumaki blood and the Hokage's failure to protect. Hiruzen's eye twitched hard, jaw clenching. These two old classmates, perfect harmony. One slaps on inept governance, the other shoves the blame onto the Jinchuriki and Mito. They'd nail him and Mito to the pillar of shame if they could. He was about to retort. A faint, bone-weary voice sounded, and stole all the air in the room. Uzumaki Mito. She didn't even raise her head. Only the hands on her knees trembled, barely. Just that. The 2 cups of steaming tea before Homura and Kaharu cracked in a spiderweb of fine lines with no warning. In the next instant, as if squeezed by an invisible giant hand, pop, pop, they shattered. Yet the tea didn't splash. It lifted as 2 thin streams that evaporated in silence. The tabletop held not a single drop of water, only 2 small piles of crazed white porcelain shards. Homura and Kaharu froze like puppets with their strings cut. Their righteous bluster stuck in their throats. Even the wrinkles on their faces seemed to solidify. Cold sweat drenched their undershirts. What they felt was the lingering pressure of the abyssal chakra and sealing mastery within this frail old body, and a will that would gladly burn to ash, taking enemies with it, to guard what mattered. Too many years of smooth sailing had made them float, forgetting who ruled Konoha. Forgetting that before them sat the first Hokage's wife, the village's ultimate power, someone their own teacher, the second, bowed to with respect. By prestige, by standing, by strength. They were nothing before her. In a single breath, the chamber's balance snapped back. Even Hiruzen's tapping fingers stilled. His eyes on Mito were complicated, respect, guilt, and a guilty thrill at seeing those two cowed. Mito's lids remained lowered, as if that silent show of power had only brushed away dust. She finally spoke, voice firm, unarguable. Last night, there was indeed an enemy attack. Kumo remnants forced a passage through a gap in the barrier at any cost. Their target was the child of my Uzumaki clan. Each word nailed the event down as enemy plot and aimed at the Jinchuriki, leaving no room for quibbles. She lifted her lids a fraction. Eyes that had seen rise and fall, that could embrace all things, were now stonehard as they swept over Homura and Kaharu's blanched faces. You wish to investigate Kushina? The calm question chilled more than a scream. Homura jerked as if shocked. His mask of grave concern for the village shattered, leaving raw panic. Never. Mito-sama, you misunderstand. We're only worried about defense gaps, afraid the enemy has a follow-up. He redirected at once. Hiruzen seized the opening and surged to his feet. He didn't spare the two elders a glance, crushed by a single look from Mito, but turned to stare down the clan representatives gathered for the council. Gaps. Defense. His roar cracked like thunder in the chamber, making hearts quiver. Open your eyes. Enemies don't fall from the sky. He slashed a hand toward the northwest, toward the forest of death, and, far beyond, the land of wind. The front. The Rain Country front. Our warriors bleed every day. Die every day. For whom do they stand? For whom do they bleed? For this peaceful rear of ours. Spittle flew with the third's blazing fury. And last night, while our soldiers on the front held Suna's main force with flesh and blood, buying us time. His voice rose to a near howl, every syllable an accusation. What did those sewer vermin hiding in the desert do, Sunagakur? Hiruzen's fist slammed the table. Even Mito's teacup jumped. They sent their most insidious spiritual secret arts unit. While our guard was thin, they bypassed the main battle line, followed the scent of death, followed the blood and rain, and slipped into our belly without a sound. He painted the picture like a witness, killing intent thick in his tone. Their goal: break our morale, paralyze our logistics, throw our rear into chaos so we can't support the front, make our parents, our wives and children live in fear. And those Kumo insects, he sneered, eyes as if looking at trash. Just Suna's disposable pawns, a decoy to mislead us. Once their kidnapping of Kushina was exposed, Suna used them as a cat's paw, divert the blame east, dump the chamber pot on Kumo, and keep us too busy to see the real culprit. Heinous. He yanked a scroll from under the table, stained with dirt and grime, and slammed it down. This is the site survey from last night's battle. Look at the residual chakra traces. The ceiling corpse elite verified with their lives. In the core band, that snake cold, clinging feel, if that isn't Suna's secret sand-binding spiritual technique, what is? That unique frequency, only those soul-twisting scum can produce it. Breaths hitched around the room as clan representatives fixed on the blood-smeared evidence. They couldn't see the details from here, but the scroll's aura of death, and Hiruzen's iron accusations, cast a long shadow over their hearts. Especially at, verified with their lives, a weight that silenced doubts. No question, the mastermind behind this chaos, this vile raid, is Sunagakur. Hiruzen's voice was a quenched steel blade, chopping the charge into place. They think a handful of pawns can shake Konoha. Dream on. His chest heaved. His gaze raked the room like burning coals, finally settling on the clan reps, lingering, especially, on those who weren't fond of the Uchiha. The front's blood hasn't dried. Our grief isn't over. Suna's poison claws have reached for our home, our parents, our wives, our children. Comrades of Konoha, this calamity isn't a natural disaster. It's man-made. It's another blood debt Suna owes us. How shall we collect that debt? His roar fell like a torch into dry tinder, igniting anger long held down by fear. Damn Suna. 3 fine sons from my Hyuga branch family died in rain to their poison sand. A Hyuga elder raged first, Byakugan flaring. Blood for blood. A Nara representative, normally the picture of cool logic, rose with red eyes. His younger brother had been on the death list just the day before. Kill them. Reinforce the front. Sharpen the blades. Let them taste Konoha's fury. Kill. Slaughter those desert hogs. The tide of rage exploded. Hiruzen had precisely redirected civilian panic, clan grief, and war fear into iron hatred of Sunagakur. Homura and Kaharu parted their lips to spout the usual, political implications, international optics, proceed cautiously, drivel. But the cold sting of Mito's Uzumaki chakra mark pricked like invisible needles, making their hair stand on end. Not a word came out. Hiruzen saw it, and knew the timing was ripe. He drew a deep breath, donned a mask of solemn resolve, and sank his voice, heavier, weightier. Blood debts must be paid in blood. But. At the single, but, the room quieted. All eyes turned to the third. Hiruzen's gaze swept like a searchlight, pausing on certain faces, especially among the clans usually unfriendly to the Uchiha. Fellow Konoha shinobi, he said somberly, amid the chaos, while the sealing corps conducted emergency spiritual scans, we detected. He paused deliberately, thickening the air. A powerful, chaotic, highly corrosive yin release wave. Not a naturally occurring disturbance, and unlike Suna or Kumo techniques. Among the Uchiha, old Uchiha Shana, rigid face, shadowed eyes, felt a tiny twitch in his brow. Deep in his aged Sharingan, a flicker of wariness. The source, in the western sector of the village. Hiruzen didn't say, edge of the Uchiha compound, but his glance brushed Shana's seat, and his finger drummed, ever so casually, on that general area of the map. It was enough. To be continued. 2 comments 0 vote. Chapter 60. Uchiha was, bonus. In an instant, a rain of glances, doubtful, disdainful, cold, shot like silent arrows and fixed on Uchiha Shana. The air seemed to fall below freezing. The seeds of suspicion had been planted with precision. No evidence was needed, only a vague direction, a few words like, chaos, yin release, and, overwhelming, plus the Sharingan's unsettling reputation, to carve a clean crack through Konoha's upper ranks and the clan circle alike. Uchiha. Uchiha, again, were they scheming amid the chaos? Had they been used by the enemy? Or, something even worse? Uchiha Shana's withered face went iron-hard, jaw clenched. He could feel those barbed stares prickling his back, wordless, cold exclusion and wariness. He didn't refute it at once. His Sharingan, darker and colder than ever, locked back onto Hiruzen. Old fox. Vicious play. He was using the other clans' doubts to choke off any Uchiha protests before they could start. Damn it, are the Uchiha born to carry the blame? But Hiruzen's next words fell with surgical accuracy on his heart. Of course, Hiruzen's tone softened, and his eyes returned to Shana with an expression that could almost be called trust, or expectation. Elder Shana's granddaughter, Uchiha Makoto, happened to be at the scene last night. She and Uzumaki Kushina are as close as sisters, and she protected her companion with courage and composure. His voice rose, the Hokage's commendation brooking no dispute. After discussion with Mito-sama, Uchiha Makoto is hereby approved to join Tsunadiheim's squad. Alongside Uzumaki Kushina and Kamiyama Ryo, she will be trained as one of Konoha's future pillars. This affirms the Uchiha clan's loyalty, and repays Elder Shana's excellent guidance. A slap, then a honeyed date, wrapped in the gilded banner of the Hokage line, and Konoha's future pillars. The looks that moments ago had brimmed with suspicion and hostility shifted at once. The Uchiha have entered the Hokage's inner circle. For other clans, that alone was a clear signal, the Uchiha were being courted and contained by the top. The Hokage needed the Sharingan's power. Doubts remained, but the pressure on the surface bled away by half. Hiruzen had successfully dragged attention from the incident itself into a subtler political question. Uchiha Shana's Adam's apple moved with difficulty. Refuse, and give up the enormous lure of the Hokage line, and Tsunade's disciple. It was a chance the Uchiha had dreamed of, to step into the core circle. Even knowing Hiruzen was sealing their mouths with sugar-coated poison, he had to pinch his nose and swallow. The price. Endure the rumors. So be it. The Uchiha have never feared slander. He closed his eyes, the corner of his mouth twitching once, an acceptance of the favor laced with venom. The flicker of sardonic satisfaction at Hiruzen's eye corner did not escape Uzumaki Mito's gaze. She sighed inwardly, almost imperceptibly. To still the internal storm, Hiruzen was using the Uchiha's awkward position once more, so be it. Her gaze returned to its calm, ancient stillness. Clack. Hiruzen slammed the table again, snapping all attention back and ending the little bout of political grappling. Konoha's priority is unity. We throw everything westward. Sunagakur will pay tenfold, 100-fold. The front needs more support, more shinobi. Avenge those who suffered last night. Guard our home. Uphold the will of fire. Yes, Hokage-sama. The clan representatives, everyone but Uchiha Shana, answered in unison, anger surging. Internal strife was suppressed, for now. All blades turned outward. The High Council adjourned with a strange consensus, thick with gunpowder and restrained calculation. The aftershocks of that meeting were far more violent than last night's silent, kingly shockwave, exactly as Hiruzen had planned. The smoke in the Hokage's office hadn't even cleared, yet he felt lighter than he had in days. He stood before the huge window, watching a village rousing from stupor. The streets were no longer littered with fainted bodies. In their place, a molten heat, stoked and guided, was about to erupt. The Anbu worked fast. Notices prepared the previous night spread like snow, bulletin boards, key intersections, even bathhouse doors. Scarlet headlines slashed like marks of vengeance. Sunagaku's secret arts raid Konoha. Scorpion claws at our door. Frontline in peril. Blood debts paid in blood. What Hiruzen had thundered in council turned to even more incendiary text, every word bleeding, every line in tears. The point couldn't be clearer. While Konoha's warriors bled in rain, Suna sent a vile spiritual secret arts squad to paralyze the rear and sever the front's lifeline. Those mangled Kumo spies. Just Suna's throwaways, framed blame, diverted hatred. Panic, aftershock, concern for one's own safety, distilled and ignited into a tidal rage, all aimed at the land of wind. Damn those Suna bastards. A man just dragged from the public hot springs, reeking suspiciously and sporting a lump on his head, howled at the poster. I fell in the cesspit, so it was those sand freaks. I'll fight them myself. I knew it felt wrong, chill to the soul. A woman rubbing her bruised skull snarled. Suna's vile secret arts. At the bathhouse doors, the crowd boiled hotter still. Hell with them. A gray-faced, robe-clad middle-aged man cursed at the signboard, despair dripping from his voice. Last night I almost died young, traumatized. My happiness for the next half of my life, ruined by those Suna bastards. Where's the front? I'll cut them down for a sacrifice. Me too. Another despondent patron nodded fiercely, hatred flooding his eyes. I'll donate 3 years' wages. Buy the front the sharpest kunai, feed them well, slaughter those desert rats. Konoha Hospital's temporary wards bulged with patients. Those who fell and broke bones, those who overdrew chakra, became the loudest voices. Suna scum. No guts to face us head on, so they crawl in the gutters. Boomed Akamichi Chojiro, arm in a sling, voice shaking the ward. I was on tree patrol, who did I offend? Arm snapped. Once I'm healed, I'm going to reign. Even if this arm's useless, I'll bite a few Sunanan to death with my teeth. Beside him, another badly injured but riled up shinobi shouted hoarsely, eyes red. Blood for blood. For my cousin, he died 2 days ago in the Valley of Wind. The Chunin exam training field was converted into a frontline enlistment point. Lines stretched out the gate, genin, young Chunin, even hot-blooded civilians, eyes blazing, itching to charge into the wind country. Sign me up. My whole family's Konoha. We won't be bullied. My old man died at Suna's hands. I'll take that debt back myself. Count me in. Kill 1, break even, kill 2, profit 1. Slaughter those Suna dogs. Clerks shouted themselves hoarse. Stacks of enrollment forms climbed into little mountains. The air stank of fervor and iron, the scent of hatred catching flame. Fear had been swept away by a flood of rage, leaving only one thought, vengeance. Against Sunagaku. With Suna blood to wash last night's humiliation. Hiruzen watched it all, the corner of his mouth curling in a thin, satisfied line. Perfect heat. The black, heavy pot on Suna's head sat snug and unmoving. The civilians' fury became fuel to accelerate the war machine. But that was only the lowest rung. In the clan districts, the mood was subtler. In the Aburame compound's humming insect gardens, newly minted Jonin Aburame Shui walked with measured steps. He tilted his head, speaking quietly to a cloaked clansman. The residual chill in that shockwave, its overlap with Suna's signature is indeed low. But if Hokage-sama says it is, then it is. His tone held no ripple, just a stated fact. Our concern is the order. Send more Kikaichu west. Rain country will be their new hunting ground. In another great compound, on Hyuga training grounds. Hyuga Tenon stood with a face like still water, Byakugan open to the void, reliving the night. At length, he closed his sight and said to the youth standing behind him, Hyuga Hiyashi, calmly, the stray waves of yin release in the chaos did point toward the edge of the Uchiha compound, but the intensity, far from enough to explain last night's scale. Still, it's good that Elder Shana's granddaughter joins the Hokage's inner squad. He paused, a blade glint flashing in his eyes. Tell our people at the front to keep close watch on the Uchiha. The Sharingan's power can be used, but must never leave our sight. His voice was soft, but brooked no dissent. Within the Uchiha compound, walled off by high stone, pressure built. The secret chamber beneath Naka Shrine was dim. Uchiha Shana sat at the head, the cold fire in his aged Sharingan burning like a provoked wolf. A few elders with equally grim faces whispered. The upper ranks, TCH. A neat, divert the flood east, leave the pot on us. Makoto entering the Hokage line, bait. Poisoned with barbs. So for the sake of Elder Shayna's granddaughter entering the core circle, we swallow this filth. Those spiteful rumors last night, clearly from them. Enough. Shayna slammed the table, voice hoarse but sharp with killing intent. Makoto must go. This is our chance to wedge into the core. As for the rumors. A razor-cold curve tugged his lips. Some of our brats need tempering anyway. Pass the word, initiate the clan's extreme training. Let them turn that humiliation into killing intent on the battlefield. Uchiha honor will be rebuilt on the enemy's corpses. His murky eyes lifted toward the Hokage building, the chill deepening. Sarutobi Hiruzen, this debt is noted. Hiruzen knew all this full well. The clans, old foxes were not so easily fooled, but he didn't care. All he needed was to divert attention and forge a common enemy, for now. As long as every spear pointed outward, internal hazards could be shelved, even turned into the drive that scatters the wolves. To be continued. Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond. Hollow Diamond 1 bonus chapter will be released for every 100 power stones. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on pad if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. 8 comments 0 vote. Chapter 61. Teammate combination. Morning in Konoha still carried last night's rain-soaked humidity. The air was sticky with blood-red posters calling for vengeance against Sunagaker. Puffy, red-rimmed eyes hadn't faded from the streets, anger sizzled like hot oil. Ryo, hand in hand with Kushina, stepped over the battered threshold of the Ninja Academy. A second ago the place croaked like a frog pit, the next, the air seemed sucked clean out. Kushina's trademark flamered hair was as bold as ever. Walking beside her was the same Ryo who had split a training ground and carved up Kumo spies days ago. What are you staring at? Kushina snapped, shooting fire at a spiky-haired kid lurking against the wall. The boy blanched, the pouch he was polishing slipped right from his hands. Whispers reignited behind them, clammy and uncomfortable as grease on skin. HMPH. Kushina snorted, hugging Ryo's arm even tighter, like she wanted to set herself into him. Ryo didn't even twitch an eyelid, letting her pull him along. The war fever had rolled straight into the academy, unsurprisingly turning class talk into a draft board. Class 5A was a steam box. The ceiling fans churned in vain, stirring hot air and teenage hormones with nowhere to go. Sweat, ink, and the faint sweetness drifting from the girls in the front row mixed into one. Hey, did you see the team list? A lanky boy elbowed his desk mate, eyes gleaming. Once we're in squads, maybe next month we can take a crank. If we're lucky and meet a few clueless enemy shinobi, couple slashes, fame across the shinobi world. When we get back, man, the girls will be lining. In your dreams. Fresh grads killing enemy shinobi. Don't get your guts punched out your ass, snorted a buzzkit. I just want a reliable squad, learn something real from a senpai. Maybe do well on the front, make Chunin, hell, maybe Jonin. His eyes slid off toward the shining allure of that flak jacket. In the back, a few girls huddled, cheeks pink, whispering. Namikaze Minato has to land in an elite squad. He's so handsome, and strong. Shish. Keep it down. Don't forget Ryo. Gods, that day, that world ending. The speaker's tone dropped, color drained from her face as the memory chilled her again. Every conversation sliced off at once, as if cut by an invisible blade. For half a heartbeat, silence. Thump, thump, boot heels, slow and heavy on hardwood, punched right through corridor noise and into everyone's ears. The classroom fell dead quiet. Heated debates, crude jokes, sweet fantasies, gone in a snap. The fan's dull drone suddenly felt sharp. At the door, 2 figures. The first to step in, a red-haired boy in a black, cloud-patterned short jacket, shoulders straight. No expression. That face was almost too handsome, and oddly lazy, like he couldn't be bothered to register the room. One hand sank in a pocket. The other hung loose, except the long, clean fingers locked tight around a slender, pale hand. Uzumaki Kushina, being led in, was a little flushed. Her flaming hair still burned, but the usual prickly swagger seemed forcibly tamped down, her spicy aura reined in. Her eyes were bright, two blue flames dancing. Whenever her gaze flicked toward Ryo, a secret pride, and a deeper sweetness, shivered there. That posture, that distance, that blazing declaration. The air froze, only the fan buzzed on. All eyes were dragged by a colossal magnet to the place their hands met. Silent. By the window, Namikaze Minato sat in pale gold sunlight, his pale gold hair catching it. At their appearance, the neat strokes of his pen hiccuped, a blot of ink bled on the page. He didn't look up. His lashes trembled once. The knuckles gripping his pen whitened, then slowly released. He wrote the next character, calm as if nothing had happened. In the corner, Uchiha Makoto turned just enough to show the side of her face, the calm, polite silhouette of a model student. Black hair fell smooth over her shoulder. Jawline delicate, posture impeccable. Only she knew how deep her nails bit into her palm inside those wide sleeves. The cool sting grounded her. She stared at a point on the chair back ahead, fighting to keep her gentle composure. Only she heard the tiny crack somewhere in her heart. She inhaled, shifted her breath with the slightest motion, and tore her gaze from Ryo, focusing on the textbook lines as if they were lifelines. Bang! Homeroom teacher Kimura's shoe pounded onto the platform with bedhead and 2 heroic dark circles. His temper burned hotter than the fresh sunabashing posters outside. Noise. All you do is noise. Men are dying on the front. The village is bleeding. And you brats can still think about anything else. His eyes were bloodshot. His stare flayed the room like a bonus scraper. Quiet. Team placements. He snapped open a scroll. Squad 1. Takagawa So, Aburame Shimi, Hyuga Nichiya. Squad 5. He rattled names off fast and flat, like announcing obituaries. Those called sat on needles, eyes locked on the door, praying their famed Jonin leader would kick it open and haul them into glory. Only low pressure and heavier breaths remained. Squad 7. Kimura barked louder than before. Namikaze Minato, Sarutobi Shinosuke, Shimura Yami. Jonin leader. He paused, gaze lingering on Minato. Jiraiya-sama. The last 2 words came out oddly small, like they had bumped something on the way out. The tight lines in Minato's posture loosened a notch. Before he could fully exhale, Kimura's voice came down again, cold and hard. Squad 8. Kamiyama Ryo, Uzumaki Kushina, Uchiha Makoto. Jonin leader, Tsunadiheim. The classroom dropped into a vat of boiling oil. Tsunadiheim, Konoha's princess. A living legend. But that wasn't the point. The point was that lineup. A monster with the scarlet pepper, plus an Uchiha. Air crystallized. Every gaze glued to those 3 names, even breathing cut off. Ryo propped his chin in one hand, eyes drifting past the window toward the Hokage rock, unreadable. Kushina's eyes flashed like they had been filled with syrup. She clung tighter to Ryo's arm. Up front, Minato's neck creaked around gear by gear, painfully slow. His gaze brushed Kushina's radiant face, his eyes filled with loss. Quiet. Kimura's rasp ripped the shock apart. Tsunadiheim and Jiraiya-sama are currently on the Rain Country front, return date unknown. Squad 7 will be led temporarily by Jonin Sarutobi Hoshizora. Then he turned toward the god statue in the back corner. As for Squad 8, Kimura drew a deep breath and forced himself to meet Ryo's gaze. Those eyes held no ripple, so calm it scraped at the heart. Hokage-sama, Kimura croaked, throat dry, wants to see the 3 of you. Now. Immediately. Report to the Hokage building. He snapped his head away. Wow. Kushina's eyes flared with delight. She shook Ryo's arm. Hiruzen wants to see us himself. Our squad has to be super important. Ryo said nothing, rising to his feet. He didn't even look at Kimura. His eyes slid over the sky. A black crow flapped down onto the shadow of the Hokage rock, black wings beating twice against the pale morning. Looked like his awakening of Conqueror's Haki and the panic it caused in Konoha would be settled today. He wondered what Sarutobi Hiruzen had planned. Worst case, become a rogue ninja. Except, Kushina. Unless there was no other choice, he would rather not walk that path. Kushina skipped after him. Makoto followed half a step behind in silence. From the moment Ryo stood, the entire room's spine seemed to bow under an invisible weight. When he was nearly at the door and the battered panel creaked open a crack, a strained, cracking voice broke the deathly quiet. Wait. Minato shot to his feet. He stared at Kushina, his lips trembled. Congratulations, stuck in his throat like a lump of lead and wouldn't come out. Ryo stopped. He tilted his head slightly. His eyes, 2 ice balls, drilled across half the room and pinned Minato. No anger, no threat. Minato felt the breath he had just drawn freeze in his lungs, his blood seemed to stall. Minato. Sarutobi Shinosuke sensed trouble, muttering low, wary eyes flicking to the red-haired calamity at the door. Minato didn't move. Time stretched thin. HMPH. Kushina flicked her hair, pride and a touch of smugness open on her face, like a small beast guarding its food. Minato-kun, we're in a hurry, please move. The 2 voices, so different, yet both cutting, scalded Minato into a shaky lurch. He stumbled back a step and thunked against his desk. Ryo drew his gaze away as if he had brushed off a speck of dust. He stepped forward and crossed the invisible threshold. Ryo, Kushina chirped, racing to catch up. As Makoto passed Minato, her steps hitched. She looked like she wanted to speak. One quick glance at his pale face and the white-knuckled grip on his desk, then she bit her lip and lowered her head, hurrying after the other two. The door closed behind them, sealing off the sticky air, and that silent stare. Inside the Hokage building, the corridors were chill and drafty. A few gray-faced administrative shinobi jogged past clutching teetering stacks of reports that looked ready to explode. Damn it, again. A clerk with a fresh lump on his temple darted around a corner, nearly colliding with the stack bearers. He cursed under his breath. The third just slammed the table, calling Suna sewer worms. Those battle reports are about to catch fire. Now they're rushing the medical supply ledger again. We just turned it in. What are we, ghosts? Shut it. Someone snarled ahead. The western line is dying. 3 more squads wiped out last night in rain. Corpses piling high. You think you get to clock out and go cuddle the wife? Move. The shinobi with the stack clenched his teeth and sped up, back stiff like a man running explosives to a bunker. At the end of the corridor, a heavy black lacquered door stood ajar. Before they even reached it, 2 dying beasts were roaring inside. Bullshit. Utter crap. Mitokado Homura's voice screeched ragged. Money, Hiruzen, you think you print it? How many years have you been Hokage and you dare write this budget? Do you know what it cost to overclock the village-wide sensing barrier last night? Drain Konoha's funds for a decade and it won't fill that pit. Where will you find money to expand 2 full-strength regiments? Scrape. Scrape my ass. Hiruzen's thunder shook the room. Suna's filthy claws reached into my house. Listen up. Even if we pawn the village blacksmith, we're burying those bastards in sand. Money. Supplies. That's your job, Homura. Keep yapping and I'll come. Celebrate. At your mansion next. Thud. Thud. The muffled blows rattled through the thick door. Sandame, a senior clerk, white as chalk and clearly rattled, tried to speak, his voice fluttering like a leaf. Get out. Hiruzen's roar smashed through next. The door jerked open a crack. The clerk practically crawled out, even paler after seeing Ryo. Fear twisted his face. He squeaked and skittered along the wall like a lizard. The storm inside poured through the gap. It's not just money, Hiruzen. Don't you get it? Udatain Kaharu's sharp tone joined the fray. The village is a busted beehive. People are terrified. Who's going to donate? Who'll send their sons to Rain to die as cannon fodder? No one. Great. Hiruzen's voice took on a razor's edge of madness. Then let's all stay home. Let Suna's blade rest on every neck. Today we get mowed down like wheat. Tomorrow we're trust pigs sold for cash. The next day you two hold a banquet in your mansions. You think when Konoha falls, you'll sit on the stump drinking tea. Keep dreaming. Silence. Only harsh, bellows-like breathing leaked through the door. Ryo's face didn't change. Kushina, excited, rose on tiptoe to peek. Ryo's arm slid out without a word and blocked her. Makoto stared at her shoes, lashes veiling every emotion, fingers pinching her skirt hem without thinking. Ahem, a few awkward coughs finally sounded within. Enter, Homura forced out, voice wobbly with varnished calm. Ryo lifted a hand and pushed the heavy door open. Behind the massive desk, the third slumped in his high-backed chair like a lion not yet cooled after rage, his red Hokage hat tossed aside, hair skewed. Bloodshot eyes slashed toward them, still crackling with thunder. Homura and Kaharu stood rigid to left and right. Smoke stung the air, mingled with the scorched paper smell of ripped files. Hiruzen cleared his throat hard, wrestling his face from tectonic fury to something like a smile, and ended up with a stiff grimace. He grabbed his pipe and tried to pack it, hands shaking so badly he couldn't strike the flint. Ryo stopped 2 paces from the desk, gaze dropping to the scroll listing, Squad 8, one corner crushed under a wad of torn documents. Kushina looked around, the oppression making her uneasy. Her fingers tugged at the back of Ryo's shirt. Makoto fixed her eyes on her nose on her heart, standing like the perfect statue. For a long beat, the only sound in the big office was Hiruzen's irritable click of the stubborn flint. To be continued. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 62. Situation bonus. Ha. Hiruzen finally gave up trying to light his pipe. He tapped it against the desk with a dull clunk. Kaharu, Homura, you two can leave. Go handle your duties. His voice was edged with command. Some things were not meant for the elders' ears. The 2 advisors were shrewd enough not to protest. Since the third had issued the dismissal, they bowed out quickly. Good. You're here at the right time. Hiruzen's eyes, heavy with authority, scanned Ryo like a searchlight, then shifted, reluctantly, to Kushina and Makoto. His voice tried to stay calm, but the gunpowder tension underneath could not be hidden. You 3 are grouped together. The documents already bear the seal. Tsunade herself requested this team. He rifled through the mess of papers on his desk until he dragged out a scroll stamped with a crimson seal, the official list for Squad 8. He set it on the desk between them like evidence. Kushina let out a small cheer before Makoto discreetly tugged her sleeve, silencing her. Tsunade, Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, looking as if he had burned through his last bit of strength. One hand rubbed his temple. The pipe in his palm was nearly snapped in two from his grip. She's on the aim front. I've already summoned her back. By rights, her team should be led by her in person. He exhaled through his nose, voice thick with fatigue. The reason I called you here was to explain the situation. For now, you're free to use your time as you wish. When Tsunade returns, she will take over. But in truth, his real purpose was Ryo. The past few days' events, the psychic quake that shook the whole of Konoha, had to be addressed face to face. Makoto was also part of this meeting to ease tensions after her clan had been scapegoated. She was meant to carry Hiruzen's intent back to the Uchiha. Kushina was here more as a gesture. To show her face, to reassure, to smooth over anxieties about the Nine Tails. Kushina, Makoto, if you have no other business, you may leave. I have matters to discuss with Ryo. His tone was kindly, but firm. Hey, old man, don't you dare bully Ryo. Kushina immediately bristled, puffing up like a small lioness, baring her fangs at the Hokage. Don't worry, I won't bully your little boyfriend, Hiruzen teased back with a smile. Kushina, it's fine, Ryo cut in, voice edged with weariness. I'll be fine. Go. HMPH. Kushina was not one to throw a tantrum without reason. She knew Ryo had serious business to handle. Still, she gave Hiruzen one last dagger-like glare before tugging Makoto out the door. Clack. The heavy door shut behind them, sealing the office in silence. Their footsteps faded down the corridor. The room grew still, oppressively so, like cotton stuffed into every corner. Smoke coiled lazily from Hiruzen's pipe, catching the overhead light. His gaze, sharp and weighted, pressed down on Ryo's shoulders, stripping away the last trace of youthful aura the boy might have carried. Outside, sunlight burned harsh white across the jagged Hokage rock. Time stretched. Finally, Hiruzen drew a deep pull from his pipe, the embers crackling. He let the smoke sit in his lungs before exhaling slow and heavy. His voice came with it, gravel-edged from tobacco and age. The psychic shockwave that blanketed half of Konoha the other day, was that you? No detours. Straight to the point. Ryo's eyelids lowered for a beat, then he raised his eyes and met Hiruzen's stare head-on. No flinch. No panic. Yeah, the word dropped into the silence like a stone into deep water. Hiruzen's grip on his pipe tightened, knuckles whitening. Smoke veiled his expression, but his eyes narrowed. He waited. Ryo's voice cut through, steady. It was the awakening of a Kekkei Genkai. My emotions spiked. I lost control. It was instinct, breaking out of its cage. No excuses. No lies. Just fact. Kekkei Genkai. Hiruzen rolled the word on his tongue. A flicker crossed his eyes, part light, part shadow. A new bloodline in Konoha was a gain. But if it could not be inherited, then it was also a dead end. That thought was gone in an instant, buried under deeper calculations. Silence stretched longer this time. Finally, Hiruzen knocked his pipe against the ashtray, the sound sharp and dull at once. Details. Control. Conditions of activation. His words were shuriken, one after another. This was not something he could afford to leave vague. He would never allow a repeat of that disaster. Currently controllable, Ryo replied just as bluntly. But that time was an accident. Emotional surge past the threshold triggered it. He tapped his temple with a finger. My body itself resisted the awakening. A form of self-protection. Hiruzen's eyes sharpened. Self-protection. Power too great. Vessel too weak, Ryo said flatly. If I force it, it will kill me. So my instincts sealed it back. I can't call it out at will. To reach the point where I can, I'll need. His eyes gleamed. The battlefield. Only real battle can push it out. I'll need pressure. And, his voice lowered on the last word, sharp as a knife dipped in blood. Nutrients. Hiruzen chuckled once, short and bitter. You don't hold back, do you? The boy demands Konoha feed him. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing to blades. And the price? Ryo's lips curved faintly, though it wasn't a smile. Anything but my life. Or, does Konoha want that too? The office froze over again. Hiruzen sucked hard on his pipe, smoke burning his throat. This boy, his composure, his raw, transactional bluntness, it was nothing like a 12-year-old. He was a cub, yes, but already growing fangs, already measuring the weight of power like a predator. Your life. Hiruzen exhaled, eyes cutting through smoke. You just saved the Ninetales' future Jinchuriki. You've earned a great merit. Konoha won't throw away its roots over this. His hand rapped the desk with a dull thud. The chaos you caused, I'll shoulder that with the council. I'll suppress their whispers. He leaned forward again, his voice turning like steel. But the damages are real. Homes smashed. Facilities wrecked. Medical costs surging. Even the bathhouse incident, all of it stirred panic. And the bill is astronomical. His eyes hardened. That debt, you'll repay it. The smoke twisted between them. When Tsunade returns, you'll go to the front. Every mission, every kill, every reward, it all goes toward paying your debt. That is your price, Ryo. His voice cracked like a hammer. Konoha gives you the battlefield. Konoha gives you the ladder to grow. Konoha shields you. And you, repay with your blade, with your blood, with your commission. Then we're even. Ryo didn't blink. Only the faintest glimmer flashed in his crimson eyes. Battlefield missions is repayment. His tone stayed flat, but there was an edge there, something primal. Bounty counted by head? He asked. Each syllable a weight dropped onto a scale. His mind already conjured images of the aim front, the chaos, the enemies hidden in the storm. A hunting ground, ripe and bloody. The raw, unmasked calculation in his words made even Hiruzen twitch at the corner of his eye. This child, was he treating war like a slaughterhouse assembly line? He shoved down the absurd thought, face darkening. Konoha doesn't put price tags on corpses, he snapped. Mission pay is fixed by rank. And Shrank pays highly, but only if you live to take it. His eyes bore into Ryo's. All rewards are settled after war. Every merit weighed and balanced into resources, Ryo. After deductions, the rest is yours. Ryo nodded once. Understood. War was the whetstone he needed. To be continued. Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond. Hollow Diamond 1 bonus chapter will be released for every 100 power stones. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on pad if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. 14 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 63. Got it for free. The moment the deal was sealed, the atmosphere in the office shifted. The thick pressure of negotiation disappeared, leaving only the faint tapping of Ryo's fingers against his knee and the soft hiss of tobacco as Hiruzen exhaled a long stream of smoke. The debt is cleared. Hiruzen's murky eyes glimmered with sharp light through the haze. Now, let's talk about another kind of business. He leaned forward, crossing the cluttered table. His shadow stretched across it, heavy with authority. That blue chakra sphere you taught Kushina, the one called Rasengan. His Adam's apple moved as he swallowed, his voice thick with desire. And that sword technique of yours, the one that split the ground with a swing of its sheath. His gaze turned razor sharp. Interested in making a deal with the village. Exchange them for something more, useful. Ryo didn't lift his eyes. What kind of exchange? His tone was curt, straight to the point. Hiruzen leaned back, reaching beneath his desk. A deep scraping sound followed as he pulled out a massive ancient scroll bound in dark ebony wood. With a thud, it landed on the table. The yellowed parchment was covered in dense crimson sealing scripts. The scroll of seals. Hiruzen's fingers brushed across it with reverence. From the time of the first Hokage, this scroll records every forbidden technique in Konoha's history. He tapped the hardened casing with a knuckle. Your Rasengan, stabilized chakra-shaped transformation, fully controllable, devastating against defenses, no hand seals required. That's a rank at least. As for that sword technique, bare-handed, no chakra required, yet it split the ground open. That's Shrank material. His gaze sharpened. You can pick 2 jutsu of equivalent rank from this scroll. How about it? Do we have a deal? His voice carried temptation, and just a trace of unease. Ryo finally moved. His eyes scanned the twisting runes, silver pupils faintly rippling with hidden energy. Deal. The word struck like a hammer. Agreed. Hiruzen's heart skipped. He had accepted that easily. He had expected to negotiate half the day. But it made sense. The scroll of seals held countless forbidden techniques, many unusable. Trading a few to gain new foundational arts was profitable from a Hokage's point of view. For Ryo, it was simpler. The Rasengan was something he had gotten for free. That swordsmanship from another world. Also free. Whether others could master it was not his concern. He was about to trade 2 things he got for nothing for 2 mightier jutsu. Pure profit. Afraid he might change his mind, Hiruzen quickly formed hand seals. His fingers blurred. Chakra light shimmered at his fingertips as he pressed the central, seal, symbol. A deep hum rippled through the air. The complex seal patterns quivered like water, then shifted aside. Moments later, a portion of the scroll unfurled, revealing lines of black ink. Check the index yourself, Hiruzen said hoarsely. Only this portion is accessible. The rest is sealed. Ryo's eyes flicked through the list, each name carried blood and legend. Wood release. Deep forest emergence S rank, forbidden impure world reincarnation S rank, forbidden yin seal S rank, flying thunder god technique S rank. One by one, jutsu that had shaken the world appeared before him. Then his gaze stopped, not on the top entries, but on a modest one marked in red. Multiple shadow clone technique, A rank. His eyes narrowed. Then they stopped again. Flying Thunder God technique, S rank. He tapped the table lightly. The sound was soft, but it hit Hiruzen's heart like a hammer. These two, Ryo said calmly. What? Hiruzen's hand jerked, almost dropping his pipe. Cough, cough, what did you just say? Multiple shadow clone technique, Ryo repeated. And the Flying Thunder God technique. Clack. The brass pipe hit the table and rolled twice before stopping upside down. Hiruzen didn't even glance at it. His eyes bulged. Are you insane? Do you even know what the Flying Thunder God is? S rank forbidden art. Spatial teleportation. Tobirama-sama spent his entire life creating it. One misstep and you'll be shredded in spatial turbulence. Do you have a death wish? Young people, he roared. Just because you killed a few Kumonin doesn't make you invincible. These techniques aren't toys. Geniuses have died trying to learn what's written here. Ryo waited silently as the old Hokage fumed. His face stayed calm. When the shouting stopped, he spoke quietly. Then, can we trade? The calm weight of those words froze Hiruzen mid-breath. His face turned red, then pale. Right, he was the one who made the offer. Jutsu for jutsu. The Flying Thunder God was S rank. Ryo's sword technique was S rank. He couldn't refuse. Hiruzen sighed. We can trade. He sank back into his chair, voice weary. Of course we can. Rubbing his face, he muttered, the permissions are open. Copy what you need. Paper and ink are in that cabinet. Before he finished, Ryo was already moving. He pulled out standard Konoha scrolls and charcoal pens. His movements were clean and deliberate. Hiruzen watched but said nothing. Ryo's full attention was locked on the open scroll. Beneath each jutsu title, short notes glowed faintly, pulsing like living warnings. Multiple shadow clone technique, A rank, a forbidden variant of the standard shadow clone. Consumes enormous chakra to create multiple, theoretically unlimited, physical clones. Each clone has independent mobility and thought. All experiences return to the user when dispelled. Risk. High danger of chakra exhaustion and mental collapse. Flying Thunder God technique, S rank. Forbidden, a secret technique for instantaneous teleportation through space. Uses spiritual imprints and spatial folding to move between marked coordinates. Core principles. Spatial anchoring, coordinate analysis, phase folding, vector displacement control. Risks. Loss of coordinates, right-pointing arrow dismemberment. Chakra miscalculation, right-pointing arrow dimensional tear. Drift, right-pointing arrow body fragmentation. Ryo picked up the charcoal pen. His hand was steady. He closed his eyes for a moment before writing. The title, Multiple Shadow Clone Technique, appeared in bold strokes. He wrote swiftly, copying every rune, every chakra diagram. The sound of charcoal scratching filled the room. Soon, one scroll was complete. He set it aside and began the next. He needed the Flying Thunder God. Once his little tomato became a Jinchuriki, she would become everyone's target. Strength alone wasn't enough. If he couldn't reach the enemy, it was meaningless. He needed speed, speed that ignored distance. He began writing again. The diagram of the Flying Thunder God was 10 times more complex. Each line carried the weight of space itself. Time blurred. Finally, the last stroke fell. 2 fresh scrolls lay before him, ink still glistening. Youth really is a kind of capital, Hiruzen murmured, breaking the silence. His tone carried weary admiration. He toyed with his pipe, eyes softening. The Flying Thunder God, I tried studying it once. Ryo looked up. Hiruzen avoided his gaze. I held Tobirama-sensei's notes once. Just constructing 7 basic anchors nearly tore my mind apart. He rubbed his temples, as if feeling the pain again. Then he looked back at Ryo. So, listen. Don't rush. Don't copy blindly. When you write your sword technique notes, let me see them. I'll help you avoid the dead ends. So you don't end up in pieces. The room smelled faintly of old paper and wood. Ryo packed the scrolls, then stood. I owe you one, he said suddenly. Hiruzen blinked. For that day, Ryo clarified, eyes calm. For your protection. Surprise flickered in Hiruzen's eyes, followed by something softer. The tension between them eased. So, the kid isn't completely cold after all. Hiruzen chuckled quietly, polishing his pipe. Didn't think the ice block could say something human. His tone was warm for once. All right, I'll remember this favor. Ryo nodded, opened the door, and stepped out. I'll send the sword technique notes later, he said as he left. The door clicked shut behind him. Hiruzen sat alone in his vast office. The Book of Seals lay open on the desk, surrounded by the faint scent of tobacco and the lingering chill Ryo left behind. The wind was gone. Silence returned. It was as if the entire exchange, words, tension, forbidden arts, had been nothing but a fleeting illusion. Hirazen's smile faded into exhaustion. He slumped in his chair. Schemes were useless with Ryo. Only honesty worked. Among the mess of documents lay a scroll labeled, Team 8, Tsunade, Ryo, Kushina, Makoto. Outside, the air over Konoha was taut like a drawn bowstring. Hirazen lit another pipe and took a slow drag. For now, the mess was contained. Once Tsunade returned, the battlefield in AIM would turn into hell itself. He wondered how big a storm that boy would stir up in the land of rain. To be continued. Chapter 64. We're so close, but you're using your brain. Bonus. The granite steps of the Hokage building cast long, slanting shadows. Kushina dragged Makoto behind a pillar, her little face flushed with excited mischief. Makoto, you know what? She lowered her voice, a bit smug. Ryo, he likes my feet. The air froze for a heartbeat. Makoto's eyes widened slightly. No way. Ryokan, with that icy personality. Her gaze instinctively dropped to Kushina's feet in her ninja sandals, slightly dusty, but pale and delicate. Her eyes flicked to her own feet beneath her skirt, just as slim and well-shaped in wooden clogs. She shifted, pressing her soles lightly against the stone slab. Mine aren't bad either. The thought stabbed into her mind like an icicle, followed by a wave of burning shame that flooded her cheeks. Uchiha Makoto, what are you thinking? She scolded herself inwardly. Kushina is your best friend. Hey, Makoto. Kushina waved a hand in front of her face, red hair leaning close, blue eyes full of suspicion. Spacing out. Jaw drop. Right. Ha. Makoto snapped back, pinching her palm with her fingertips, forcing a flawless smile. Kushina, you're so lucky. I'm happy for you. She paused, voice softening with a playful lilt as she deflected the topic. But you little minx, telling me this means you want your strategist to keep plotting for you, right? So, how do we bring him down next? Makoto, you get me. Kushina puffed up proudly, her eyes sparkling. We're besties. Thanks to you, Ryo and I have come this far. And in the future, my kids will call you godmother. She thumped her chest solemnly. Makoto lowered her lashes, hiding the faint flash of sourness and unwillingness in her eyes, smiling gently. We're best friends, of course. Sunlight filtered through the columns, slicing patchwork shadows across the two girls. Makoto took a deep breath, then leaned close to Kushina's ear. Her warm breath brushed the redhead's small earlobe. Actually, I've got a brilliant idea. You can reward Ryokan without looking too forward, and it'll make him even more attached. He'll treasure you himself. Her whispers were soft and quick, like fine raindrops tapping against Kushina's heart. The details were impossible to hear. But Kushina's vivid blue eyes widened, her pupils shrinking like a startled cat's. Her long lashes trembled rapidly. The blush on her cheeks shot to her ears and down her neck, painting her face a ripe, glowing tomato. Her body stiffened, her toes curled uneasily in her sandals. She tried to press her knees together, then froze, like a puppet hung on invisible strings. A tiny, almost inaudible whimper escaped her throat. It was as if invisible sparks exploded between them. Just then, the heavy dark door of the Hokage building opened. A tall figure stepped out into the sunlight, Ryo. His face was calm as ever. Those silver eyes, faintly tinted red by the sun, swept over them and stopped on Kushina's flushed face. A flicker of confusion crossed his gaze. What's with my little chili pepper today? Wah, Ryo. Kushina reacted like a small animal with its tail stepped on. She bounced back a step, then slid forward again, fumbling to hide her blush. You're out. That old, Grandpa Third. Didn't give you trouble, right? If he dares bully you, I'll burn his precious beard right now. She babbled, trying to bury her slip under exaggerated bravado, her eyes darting everywhere but at Ryo. Ryo's gaze paused on her flushed face, automatically ignoring her beard-burning threat. He walked up to her. It's fine. Good news. His tone barely changed. He reached into his cloak, pulled out a pale yellow scroll, and handed it to her. Here, multiple shadow clone technique, a rank. With your chakra reserves, it suits you. The scroll felt cool in her hands as it unfurled. The bold inked characters seemed almost alive. Wah! A rank. Kushina gasped in delight. Her blush melted into excitement. She caught the scroll instinctively. The cold paper felt warm in her hands now. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering like a lake full of stars. Ryo, thank you. Kushina. Ryo cut her off, brow twitching slightly. His voice was low, leaving no room for argument. Between us, don't say that again. A strange warmth welled up in her chest, washing away her earlier embarrassment. She sniffed, the shine in her eyes brightening. Forgetting all strategy, she lunged forward, clinging tightly to his arm, pressing close as she tilted her rosy face up. Okay, I won't say it. Her soft warmth and faint sun-dried scent surrounded him. Ryo's body stiffened slightly, but he didn't pull away. He looked down at the fluffy red hair nestled against his arm and let out a quiet, resigned hum. Can't do anything about you. He lifted his hand, dropping his palm onto her head. Not gentle, even a bit rough, as he rubbed twice at her messy hair. He avoided her forehead and cheeks with measured care, like a clumsy lion tending to something that belonged to him. Only Kushina could feel that faint note of comfort in his touch. The air went still. Even the wind curved around their corner. A few steps away, Makoto stood frozen like a porcelain doll in shadow. The earlier, strategy talk, that faint flutter over toes, faded into nothing. She watched Kushina cling to Ryo's arm, watched Ryo, usually cold to everyone, deliver that awkward yet indulgent head rub, watched Kushina's goofy smile drown in sweetness. A lump of cold lead settled in her stomach. The spark of thought and plan that had flared when she'd glanced at her own feet was smothered. She could feel the warmth inside her chest cool rapidly to nothing. Her nails dug deep into her palm. The sting brought a thin illusion of calm. Fine, very fine, Kushina. The corridor's stone columns stood gray and solemn. Light cut harsh lines across everything. Only Kushina's red hair and the pale hand holding the scroll burned vividly bright. Makoto's heart twisted like the crescent mark in her palm. She couldn't stay. Ahem. A deliberately muted cough broke the silence. Ryo and Kushina turned at once. Makoto's head was slightly bowed. A few strands of black hair fell across her forehead, hiding half her face. She hid her bleeding palm inside her sleeve, the other hand lifting to smooth a non-existent stray hair near her temple. The motion was stiff, as if to hide the tremble in her fingers. Her voice came light and calm. Kushina, Ryokan, I just remembered the clan elders assigned me something important. I have to go back before afternoon. It's urgent. She didn't even try to make it sound convincing. So, you two talk. Let's stop here today. I'll go now. Before the last word fell, she turned and fled, the hem of her kimono fluttering around her ankles. Only then did Kushina seem to realize. Ah, she blinked, loosening her grip on Ryo's arm, looking after Makoto in a daze. Clan business. Oh, Makoto, you, take care. Her big eyes still held a trace of dampness, not fully understanding her friend's sudden exit. She waved the scroll without thinking. Only afterward did something feel off. She caught a glimpse of Makoto's downcast eyes, dark and bottomless like a lake at night. Then, as if startled by Ryo's calm scent, she instinctively leaned closer to him again, mumbling, then hurry home. Don't delay it. Her tone mixed real concern with a faint hint of possessiveness. Makoto swayed slightly. I shouldn't be here. The next moment, she pivoted cleanly. Her dark braid flicked behind her as she walked away. She didn't look back. Her steps tapped softly on the cold stone, talk, fading into the wide plaza. At the last moment before vanishing around the corner, her slender back straightened slightly, like a drawn bowstring. But the shadows of the building swallowed her whole, leaving only silence and the faint trace of pride that Konoha's vastness quickly devoured. HMPH. This is all your fault. In the shadow of the pillar, Kushina suddenly kicked Ryo's calf, lightly, more a pout than a hit. Her emotional wave had passed. Hands on hips, she glared at Ryo's calm face. If you hadn't come out so suddenly, I wouldn't have lost face in front of Makoto. You scared her off with that ice face of yours. HMPH. The awkwardness from Makoto's departure she redirected entirely toward Ryo, forgetting who had melted into their two-person world first. Sunlight sliced through the gaps between columns, dust drifting in the golden air. Kushina's blush hadn't fully faded. Mixed with her fiery glare, she looked like a sugar-coated chili pepper, bright and stinging. She tilted her chin arrogantly, her sharp jawline cutting against the light and shadow. Hey, Makoto's gone, what are you staring at? Kushina waved her hand hard in front of Ryo's face, trying to pull back his attention. Ryo drew his gaze from the corner where Makoto had disappeared. The sunset stretched their shadows long across the ground. Kushina's waving arm shadow poked into his outline. He looked down at her small, puffed-up face. That unreadable chill he'd seen in Makoto's eyes, like a deep current, slipped quietly from his thoughts. His world steadied again, fixed on this burning splash of red before him. Nothing, Ryo said flatly, as if stating a fact. He lifted his hand and lightly tapped his knuckles against Kushina's smooth forehead with unarguable force. A soft bonk cut off the words she'd been winding up to yell. Ow. Kushina covered her forehead, eyes round. Why'd you hit me? Can't I complain a little? You. The rest faded. Ryo's hand didn't leave her forehead. It slid down, warm and rough, brushing over her ear and tucking a strand of red hair aside. His palm rested at the nape of her neck, firm yet strangely gentle, an undeniable command. Let's go, Ryo said simply, striding forward. Drawn by him, Kushina stumbled, then matched his pace. Wide-eyed, she forgot her anger. All she could feel was the spot where he'd touched her neck, a tiny flame running down her spine and making her limbs weak. Ryo's profile was calm in the fading light. He looked ahead, as if knocking her forehead and guiding her along were the most natural things in the world. But that single gesture said more than any words could. She was his. No need for explanations. The sunset stretched their shadows longer and longer. Kushina's steps shifted from passive to eager, until their two silhouettes on the road home overlapped, merging into one along the stone streets of Konoha. A few fallen leaves spun in the breeze, settling behind them, left quietly in shadow. To be continued. Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond, Hollow Diamond. Hollow Diamond 1 bonus chapter will be released for every 100 power stones. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on pad if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. 8 comments 0 vote. Chapter 65. Makoto's feeling of stealing. Makoto did not know how she made it back. Scarlet posters screamed from both sides of the street, blood debts must be repaid. Annihilate Suna. The air was steeped in a mix of iron rust from ninja tool shops and the bitterness of apothecaries' herbs. The villagers, whispers pricked her ears like needles. That one's from the Uchiha. Heard the sensory barrier picked up a yin release fluctuation near their compound yesterday. Hokage-sama forced it down. TCH, shifting the disaster east, right. Only fools buy that. Still, that little Uchiha girl climbed high, got into Tsunade's squad. Tisk, tisk, must have used her tricks. Makoto's steps nailed to the ground. The sting in her fingertips spread, but a stronger emotion surged up, anger. She remembered the suffocating council meeting her grandfather Setsuna had told her about. Hirazen's face, outwardly gentle, in truth cold and calculating. To appease public fury and redirect focus, he had taken a vague report. The source of the psychic shock might have brushed the edge of the Uchiha district, and twisted it into a shadow of suspicion stamped onto every Uchiha. Grandfather Setsuna had sat below, the suppressed fire in his Sharingan so cold it could have burned through the roof. But in the end, he had to swallow that toxin wrapped in sugar, the so-called favor of an entry ticket into the Hokage's inner circle. For the Uchiha, for a slim chance to squeeze into the core. And the cold stares and suspicion from the other clans became the interest on that favor. But why? Her joining teammate was clearly political compensation. Hokage's bomb and calculation rolled into one. Why should she bear baseless slander and gossip? Just because she was Uchiha? Because the rabble and scheming clans needed a target for their fear. Because Hirazen needed a scapegoat. Anger, like magma, blasted aside the sour ache and disappointment in her chest. Even the grievance stoked moments ago at the Hokage building, sparked by Kushina's oblivious third-wheel stunt, sizzled and burned in the fire. The brave get to enjoy the world first. The thought cleaved through Makoto's tangled mind like ice-tempered lightning. Breathing a little hard, she leaned against the cold wall and closed her eyes. Back came the image, clear as day, of that red-haired loner in a faded, washed-out shirt, standing like a solitary wolf at the back of the classroom. How many girls had snuck glances at his face back then? But besides Kushina, who had the guts to go near? Even a second glance left you frozen by those glacier eyes. She remembered her own faint yearning then, and a small, guarded pride, yet she had not dared step closer. And the result, cowardice is a sin. Then came Uzumaki Kushina. A clueless, reckless girl from outside the village. On sheer, shameless courage alone, like an irrational wildfire, she crashed straight through Ryo's keep-out ice wall. How many times had she snatched his food and been barked at, beat it, you're noisy. Anyone else would have frozen to death. But Kushina. The more she got knocked back, the braver she returned. With that shameless, stubborn, fear-nothing energy, she became the one closest to that lone wolf. In the end, she even took that cold, hard heart. And Uchiha Makoto, clutching laughable restraint and a noble girl's pride, she watched, late to the race, overtaken in the end. A fierce, choking frustration and unwillingness battered around her chest. Why? What did Uchiha Makoto lack? Beauty. Brains. The poise of a high-born Uchiha lady. She had noticed that boy named Ryo even earlier than Kushina. Why did the prize go to that simple, smiling blood-red chili pepper? HMPH, Kushina. Makoto opened her eyes. Deep within them flashed, for an instant, a glint of jealousy that even she found frightening, then it drowned a heartbeat later in helplessness and complicated feeling. After all, Kushina was her best friend. This stifled breath, she could only swallow it with blood. Hard to accept. That was Uchiha Makoto's greatest hard to accept. But the more she choked on it, the clearer her circumstances became, a catalyst instead of a cure. As the granddaughter of the Uchiha Grand Elder, her very existence had never been her own to command. There was only one road, political marriage, a bargaining chip to secure the clan's interests. Look at the men in the clan. Not much skill, eyes growing out of their foreheads. They prattled all day about the so-called glory of the Sharingan and how glorious the ancestors were, drowning in yesterday's fumes. Compared to him, the monster who split the earth with a few sheath strikes, who carved through Kumo spies like chopping melons, whose psychic shock swept half of Konoha. Nausea rolled through Makoto's gut. That clogged frustration curdled into disgust. Especially that sticky fly she could not shake, Uchiha Fugaku. Makoto, you are back. A graceless face thrust in, false concern and oily smiles blocking her path back to herself. Uchiha Fugaku. Here we go again. Inwardly, Makoto flipped the Sharingan like a Hyuga's blank Byakugan glare. This pest. Flaunting his status as deputy clan head and being 5 or 6 years older, he had actually asked grandfather Setsuna for her hand. Couldn't he take a long, hard look in a puddle at least, at that visage that shamed the Uchiha name? Generations of Uchiha, handsome men and lovely women, how did he end up such a failed half-breed anomaly? Looking unfortunate is not your fault. Being unfortunate and narcissistic and trying to lay hands on me, that is your original sin. Fugakuni, hello. Makoto lowered her lids. The flawless noble lady mask slid over every real emotion. Her voice was cool, polite yet distant, shutting out all approach. No expression on that exquisite face. A slight dip of the chin, and she moved to pass. Uchiha Fugaku seemed oblivious to the silent go away, or maybe he had long grown used to her reserve. He kept half a step at her side rear, eyes gleaming with what mattered most to him. You have worked hard. Oh, how did the team assignment go today? Did the Hokage make good on the promise? On assignment day, he had parked himself on the route Makoto had to take home. Comfort and concern did not matter. He had one goal: did Makoto squeeze into Team 8, the symbol of the Hokage's inner power core? It decided whether Elder Setsuna's concessions in the council had been worth it, and whether the Uchiha could use this chance to merge deeper into the core. Clan. In these Uchiha men's eyes, beyond those paltry calculations and face, was there anything else? Makoto stopped dead. A hot, foul fire shot straight to her crown. Both are straight-laced men. Ryo was cool and distant, few words, yet he had the strength and presence to hold up the sky, and he doted on Kushina. But Uchiha Fugaku here, bared his intent to use her as a tool, an infiltration piece to question for intel. The politeness and tolerance she had maintained for her grandfather's sake and his title snapped. Tsunadesima will return to Konoha in a few days. Makoto spun around. The gentleness was gone from her voice. In its place were impatience and tamped-down fury. When she does, Tsunadesima will personally lead our squad. Deputy clan head, you may report back with peace of mind. She addressed his station directly, eyes cold as steel. Fugaku flinched beneath the sudden sharpness of her tone and the chill in her gaze. His caring smile froze. He finally, belatedly, sensed that something was wrong with Makoto's mood, but had no idea why the fire. Instinctively he started to explain, Makoto, that is not what I meant. I was just worried about you. Makoto, you, Fugaku. An elderly, hoarse voice cut him off, iron authority brooking no argument. Uchiha Setsuna had somehow appeared at the main gate not far away. His clouded Sharingan skimmed over Fugaku, gaze indifferent, as if at a roadside stone. You may go. I have matters to discuss with Makoto. Fugaku's face flipped from blank to embarrassed, then flushed with a trace of slighted anger, but before the iron-blooded elder, he did not dare to protest. He forced his temper down, squeezed out a respectful fake smile. Yes, Elder Setsuna, I will take my leave. He bowed stiffly. When he turned, his hurried steps were uneven. His back was all fluster and shame. Watching his hasty retreat, the foul fire in Makoto's chest did not fully die. Instead, a deeper fatigue and helplessness welled up. This was the man she was meant to face in the future, a deputy clan head who could be waved off by the Grand Elder and did not dare talk back. Grandfather. Makoto followed Setsuna into the compound, through the winding corridors. Their footsteps sounded unnaturally clear in the empty, silent courtyard. They reached Setsuna's private tatami room, and the paper door slid shut without a sound. He did not ask about assignments right away. He gestured for her to sit. The assignments are as you wished, grandfather. Makoto spoke first, her tone unreadable. Team 8. Tsunadesima is the Jonin leader. Ryo, Kushina, and me. She deliberately pressed weight onto Kushina, tangled threads of secret struggle and the complicated feelings of submitting to her grandfather's marriage plans knotting together. Uchiha Setsuna stood with his back to her, looking out at the winter Daphne tree in the courtyard, the emblem of the Uchiha flame. At her report, he only made a faint, almost inaudible sound. After a pause, his rasp returned, this time hammer solid, the cadence of command. Makoto, from now on, you must find a way to draw close to that Ryo, of the Kamiyama line. He turned sharply, his clouded yet piercing Sharingan locked onto her face, no longer a grandfather to a granddaughter, but a clan lord to a precious tool to be used to the utmost. You must make it so he sees only you. At any cost. Hold him in your hands. Setsuna's tone burned with fervent ambition. He is Tsunade's disciple, monstrous potential, bearing the makings of a Hokage. His voice rose with excitement. If you can secure him, you could one day be the Hokage's wife. If you sit firmly in that place, then we Uchiha can step on the Senju and reach the summit, become Konoha's true masters. Then we will see who dares make us take the blame again. His withered fingers trembled with force, sketching a blueprint that could drive the entire Uchiha into a frenzy. Hokage's wife. Makoto's body went rigid, fingertips like ice. She had long guessed she would be used for marriage, but, draw close to Ryo, Hokage's wife, seared across her heart like red-hot brands. Ryo, that cold, powerful boy, become his wife, control him. The thought itself carried a forbidden, breathtaking allure. All the more when his figure, his strength, and those intimate moments with Kushina had just been roiling through her mind. A sudden, indescribable thrill, part theft and part shiver, shot electric down her spine. And right on its heels came a stronger wave, the guilty pleasure of stealing and the weight of sin tangling together. To be continued.